So I have a story to tell. There seems to be something going on in the world, and I feel like it's my time to contribute my part. So, without getting into too much detail, I had a pretty rough, extremely traumatic childhood, and that led to drug, self medication, and alcohol starting at about 11 years old until about 22 years old or so. I'm 38 now. So anyway, kind of life goes on. Life's hard. Never been spiritual or anything like that. I was always atheist. Life was pretty hard. Had no real reason to believe in a happy-go-lucky God or anything like that. So just a relatively militant atheist in a jokingly malicious way. But eventually some things started happening to me and kind of started changing the way that I thought. And I guess the first real thing was I fell off a roof. I fell off a three-story building when I was 19. A month of my life is gone. Basically, I remember partying, and then I'm laying in my bed in a turtle shell a month later because my back's broken. Nobody has any idea what's going on. Everybody's, when I passed out, you were still drinking. Okay, all that aside, that's a really long story in and of itself. So anyway, doctors say 30-foot fall on my feet is what it would take to compress my vertebrae. I had 2 compressed vertebrae, my T12 and L1, broken shoulder blade, and a fractured skull. The doctor said I should have been dead. My mom took me to the hospital, walks in, she tells them whatever she tells them. They give me either a CAT scan and MRI, I can't recall anymore. And they come back out and they put me on a stretcher, put me in a helicopter and life flight me to Columbus. And my mom was like, what is going on? What is going on? And she said that doctor was just looking at that paperwork, shaking his head back and forth. He said, I cannot believe that he stood here and talked to me. He should be brain dead and paralyzed, if not dead. Actually, I think it was the other way around. He should be dead, and if not, brain dead and paralyzed. But, so anyway, so that happens. And when I wake up in my turtle shell a month later, I'm just kind of sitting there thinking about things. And thinking, just, you got nothing to do. Your back's broken, you're supposed to be dead. You're just sitting around thinking about stuff. So I'm thinking and I'm thinking and I'm thinking. And I'm just remembering all these things. For whatever reason, it occurs, all the times where I thought I should have died came back to mind, which is a few of them. And now, medical professionals said, no, like, this was supposed to kill you. And in that moment, as just processing all these things, like, just this light bulb came on in my head. And I said, well, there must be a God. And clearly he likes me. And I just can't die. So, from that point on, I went into madness. So from 19, when that happened on November 4th, 2004, I was 19. From that point until I was about 22, I lived quite literally as though I was immortal, that I could not die. And I put myself in a lot of risks, and I put a lot of other people in a lot of risks doing so. And so then eventually something happened. I don't know what it was, but eventually, one day I woke up after some drinking and not remembering anything, blacking out every weekend from 15 or 16 until I was 22. One day I just started waking up feeling really, really bad about that. Like it wasn't funny anymore. It wasn't this thing or what. It was awful, and I hated it. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about a lot of things, and eventually, being a self-centered human being, I was like, well, clearly it's everybody else's fault. It's all my friends' fault. It's Greenfield's fault. I just need to get away from all this stuff, and everything will be better. Because I'm clearly I'm all right. I'm the good one. Everybody else is bad. So, kind of having that mentality in my mind, just going off the deep end. And then one day, even having those thoughts, like it was just one of those things that I continued going through the processes of my social life and reckless behavior. So then I was working at this factory, and this other guy starts working there, and we get to talking and everything like that, and comparing our party lives. It's like, oh, I'm a drinker, and you're a drinker. Oh, you come party with me. So before work that night, I went and picked up I believe it was a liter of either Jägermeister or Jack Daniels. I can't remember. And so him and I, after we got off work at like 11:30, noon, midnight, whatever. We work some weird second shift. Go to my friend's house, and just like I told him, we're all partying. We're just going down there. There's cases of beer and bottles of liquor. So we sit down, we start playing asshole, and because I'm me, I I felt the need to impress, and by impressing means drink myself into oblivion in a very small amount of time. And so just start hitting it hard. Blackout. Last thing I remember, smoking weed in the back room. And then next thing I know, I am in the driver's seat of my Chevy Blazer in the parking lot of Burger King. One hand on the gear shift, one hand on the steering wheel, and it's running. And I'm just sitting here. And it's like 10:30 in the morning. And I'm like, oh. So I just kind of sit there and gain my composure for a few minutes. I was like, okay, I got to be at work in like 3 hours. I should probably go home. So I'm driving home, and while I'm driving home, this little voice says, "If you keep doing this, you're gonna die." And for the first time, really ever in my life, but particularly since I had this revelation about my supposed immortality, I was just like, I knew it. I absolutely knew that I was going to die. And so with all that, just this whole thing with this other guy that worked with us, and it was this weird situation. There's this guy started working with us, and like the first day he starts, like he looks at me at that back then. I had hair down to my shoulders. People called me Jesus and Jim Morrison, and I remember this kid he was a few years younger than me. So this kid comes in, he's working, he's always looking at me real weird. And at first, I was for sure he was gay. I was like, okay, this dude, I'm pretty, I got long hair, whatever. This guy's just whatever. And so anyway, but then he starts talking about Jesus and God and stuff all the time. It's like, okay, well, I guess he's probably not gay, but I mean, it's whatever. I didn't care. But so then we're all working together for this whole time period for months and months and months and months. And then this evening happens. I go home. After I have this realization, I go home and I pass out for a few hours, wake up, go to work, dressed the way I was last night. I've got a little bit of puke on me. I still reek of liquor. And we go in there, and me and Jordan, we had to go kind of hang out. We were hanging trees. It was a turkey bacon factory. So we're doing something with these trees off in the other room. It was just him and I. And for whatever reason, I felt really compelled to tell him about the night before. So I just lay it all out to him, and I think I said something about like how I'd like to go to church with him or something like that, and then he just lights up like a Christmas tree, and he says, "The day that I walked in here and I looked at you, God told me to start praying for you, and I've been praying for you ever since." And I was like, "Oh wow, that's crazy." So I remember he gives me a Bible. And then I start reading through Genesis. It's pretty boring. So I go to Revelation, I read through that. And at some point in the process of that, I realized that half-assed wasn't an option. Like, hypocrisy wasn't an option. Like, playing the game wasn't an option. And whatever's going on is real. And I'm not ready to do it yet. So I put it down. And then that's when things went spiraled out of control. Bad. And so just go nuts. It's as nuts as I've ever gone, which is pretty freaking nuts for just months. And then one day I'm at work, and while I'm doing that, just like when I'm by myself, like I'm in a hole. Like this isn't let's all go and be cheery. Like this is me in a destructive, like subconscious attempted suicide type stuff. Like so. And then one day I'm at work just going through these motions. And I go out on my lunch break, and we have little lockers. I have my phone in it. I pull the phone out, and it's my buddy David. And he's like, "Hey man, my uncle owns this company doing like electrical work for the government. You want to travel? You want to travel around the country doing electrical work?" I said, "Fucking A right, I do." So, quit my job, gave up the place I was renting, moved back with my mom for a few weeks, and hit the road. And so here it is, finally. Whoever God is that answered my prayers, I finally get to escape all my problems. And so I end up going out to a couple of places, end up settling in Big Springs, Texas, doing lighting and retrofitting at a prison there. And living in a little hotel, well, not a hotel, but like an apartment, basically just a townhouse with like 3 bedrooms, but there's like 5 of us staying in there because the company was cheap. but so anyway, so we're there, and I'm working at this prison doing this thing, and everybody gets along real well, and then one day, I'm sitting around after work, just drinking beer, smoking my cigarettes, playing my guitar. But I'm drinking pretty regularly still, and then it occurred to me that in the process of all that, like I'd escaped everything that I escaped all the bad influences that were holding me back, and here I am in Texas, just drinking every day after work, and just blowing all my money, and just I'm nothing has changed. My circumstances have changed. If I knew drug dealers, I'd be doing drugs, but I know drug dealers, so I just got drunk all the time, and it's just like, and just the stone cold reality just hit me in that moment that, well, shit. It's not Greenfield. It's not my friends. It's not this. It's not that. It's you, buddy. And I was like, oh, shit. So I took it well. I said, you know what? Quit drinking, quit smoking cigarettes, started going to the gym. So just instead of getting off work and going and doing what I would normally do, I'd go to the gym, just kill myself for like 2 hours, go back, pass out, work. Just went through that cycle. That lasted a couple of months, and then that job ends, and I get sent off to El Paso. And about 3 days into that job, I think we got there on Wednesday, and it was a Friday after work. There was these Dominican dudes there, and there was a bunch of partiers. It's like, hey, you want to go to the club? And I was like, yeah, let's go to the club. So, and we go to the club, and we're at the club. It's like, hey, you want to get some Coke? I was like, yeah, let's get some Coke. So, anyway, I'm just snorting Coke off the toilet paper dispenser in the bathroom, and this, that, and the other, and then, I don't know, anyway, end up with this girl, and then she basically moves in with me in my hotel for like 3 months, and then we're getting into unnecessary details at this point. Not really. So anyway, so kind of go through these things, and I had this really weird experience with her where I wake up. It wasn't with her, it was just there. So I'm having a dream, and in my dream, I'm sifting through the nightstand next to the bed in the apartment, and then I wake up, and that's what I'm doing. I'm sifting through that wasn't a dream. That was me dreaming what I was doing, and just like a really strange kind of situation. So anyway, that was like just a really weird, like, wow, that's odd. That's never happened before. And then, so that I'm on that job for a few months, and then that job ends, and then I leave, and then I'm in another place with some dude in a camper on the side of a hill in a little place called Mineral Wells, Texas, and he was kind of a weird dude. I mean, he was whatever. He was quiet, but he was just kind of weird. Like we didn't get along. I mean, there wasn't nothing negative, but it was just like he was just a strange dude, and we had no interest in each other. And so anyway, at this rate, I'm sinking down into a pretty dark hole. And I remember going down. There's a state park up the other side of the hill that our camper was on, and going down there one day just because I had nothing to do, and there's a big lake back there. And so I was driving around, and then I go back. There's a big park with a bunch of rock ledges and stuff where people go rock climbing. And it had rained recently, so there's a big thing up. Said no rock climbing. Rock climbing's prohibited, but you can still go back there. So I go back there, and I'm just kind of walking around, just looking around. I got a bottle of water with me. I'm just walking around, just whatever. I've always liked nature. I've always liked to be outside. So I'm walking through this thing, and just there's all these cliffs and rock walls and stuff like that, and the lake's kind of out there. And I remember just coming up to this rock wall. It's probably about 35, 40 feet high, just looking up at it. And just looking at it, and looking at it, and looking at it. And I think to myself, I bet I could do that. And it's like, and it's kind of the doubt sets in. It's like, and like, there's some part of me that's just like, I think I can do that. And so I look up, and I was like, and I look at my water bottle, and I throw my water bottle up, and it lands up on the top. And then I say to myself out loud with the shit-eating grin on my face, like, well, I guess I gotta go get my water. So I just jump up. I start climbing up this thing, and just 1 foot hold, and everything just kind of going up it, and I get probably about 6 or 10 feet from the top or so, and all of a sudden, like the whole way up is just like, oh, there's a hand, and then I get up there, and it's like, all of a sudden, I can't see my next move, and I look up, and I'm like, oh, I'm a good ways away from the top, and I look down, and I'm like 30 feet off the ground. And So I was standing there and just I had no clear line of progress. Like, what do I do? And then like I remember my knees just started quivering, and I was just like, I'm about to die. If I fall down, like there's big giant boulders under me. I'm gonna land on those things and die. Nobody knows I'm out here. Nobody's supposed to be out here. I'm gonna die in this wood and get eaten by raccoons. And so it's just like, no, I'm not. And then I just remember something just kind of came over me, and just like my legs locked up. I looked up and I saw this ledge. It was about 3 feet over there, and I literally had to jump out and I had to jump up and leave all the connection I had and grab a hold of it. And then so it was just one swoop. I just grabbed it, just grabbed a hold of this tree on top and climbed up. And when I got up to the top, it was electric. And I just grabbed my water bottle, chugged it down, and took off running. And so I'm just running, and I'm jumping over like 6 foot openings where it's like 50 feet to the bottom, and I'm just running and jumping and jumping and jumping and jumping and just doing all this stuff and just running and running. I get to the end of that and I come down this hill, and then there's this rock that comes up. I swear to God, it was like the Lion King. Like this rock is like sticking out over it. It's like sticking out at an angle over the lake. I run up to this rock and I just jump and I dive into the lake, and then it was just like, and then just like it all just kind of calmed down while I was in the lake. And it's just it was a really intense, really incredible experience. And then so anyway, that happens, and then I just go back and I'm in the camper, so get some beer and start drinking. And I had another one of those weird dreams. Like in my dream, there's something. And the thing was, in the hotel dream, there was something in that nightstand I was looking for. It was the most important thing in the world, and I'm looking for it. And then now, the most important thing in the world is under the panel of the refrigerator that is mounted in the side of this camper that we're living in. So in my dream, I'm trying to tear this panel off of this camper, trying to find the secret. And so I'm prying it off, trying, and all of a sudden I wake up. And as I start waking up, she's like, and I'm dreaming, and then it's like, as I wake up, like the dream doesn't go away. The dream is still there, and now I'm awake, and I'm like, oh no. And I look over, and dude, I think his name's Chris, he's still sleeping. I was like, okay, good. So I just remember getting up, going into the bathroom, just splashing water on my face, just looking at myself in the mirror, and just like, Lee, what the fuck is going on? You're losing it, bro. And I just staring myself in the face for a long period of time. And then, well, I had no answer, so I guess I gotta work in the morning, so I gotta go back to bed. So anyway, so all that goes on. And I just remember, and that job lasted 2 weeks, and then I came home. But I remember around the time that I had, around the time in that those 2 weeks there, and maybe the last couple of weeks that I was in El Paso, like I'd kind of lost hope in whatever transformation I'd accomplished in my few weeks or my couple of months, however long it was, of working out and being not me, I guess. And then so I remember all I was thinking for the past few weeks is I just want to go home and go to a festival and just eat a bunch of mushrooms or eat a bunch of acid or some ecstasy, or just because that was my happy place. That was my escape before. So the trauma of my childhood, it has left me with an inescapable darkness that just exists on the inside, that sometimes overwhelms me and kind of draws me into a super huge depression, but I can usually keep it stifled. And for years and years and years, I kept it stifled with drugs and alcohol and just erratic behavior. But so anyway, so that's just a little caveat that'll be important later, I guess. So all I want to do is go to the festival because, okay, so yeah, so anyway, festivals, going to festivals and eating it. When I first ate acid, like I was like, oh wow, this is different than reality, and I hate being alive, so this is wonderful. And so that was my go-to. Like I loved the trip because it just made reality different and much more wonderful for X amount of time. And so I just remember thinking, well, that didn't work. I didn't escape, and I think maybe I knew I was going home or something like that. And I was like, well, you know what? Let's go. I mean, clearly this is life, so I guess I'm just gonna go back to doing what I do. So I'm just gonna go trip balls and escape reality for a while, and then whatever. And so I get back on Thursday. I get back Thursday morning, and And I just remember thinking, I just want to go jam. My drums are at Kyle's house. I just want to go play some music. I've been gone. I just want to go jam. So we go out there, and I remember one of the first things Zach says to me is, "Lay Shammy Bash tonight." And I'm just like, so by the grace of the miracles of God of the universe, or whatever you want to call it, all I've been thinking for weeks is I can't wait to go home and go to a festival. I get home Thursday morning, or I think I got home whenever we flew in Wednesday evening, and then when I got up Thursday, I went to go jam. And the first thing that happened on Thursday, Zach tells me, "Shammy Bash tonight." It's this magical 4-day festival that I've never heard of. Every festival I've ever been to is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The day I show up, the festival starts right then and there. Dropped everything, filled a cooler full of beer, grabbed my guitar, drove to Columbus. And I remember it was a 4-day festival, so I remember just talking with Zach. I think it was like, "Oh, you know what? We're not gonna trip the first night. We'll just get drunk this night, just chill and have a good time, and then we'll trip. We'll trip on Friday." I was like, "Yeah, it's a great idea." So we get there, and we start partying, just hanging out. It's a festival. Everything's great. Everything's cool. We just listen to jam and listen to music, drinking, and then so at some point, obviously, I'm drunk, and then this dude that Zach knows pops up, and he's just like, "Anybody interested in some fungus?" And despite my earlier resolution, I said, "Well, yes, I am." And so anyway, follow this dude off and this, that, and the other, and a very long, overdrawn thing. Eventually, he gives me these shrooms, and I remember he hands them to me and he tells me, he says, "Listen, don't take all these at once, man. These are Hawaiian clothes caps. These are the shit." And I just remember thinking to myself, it's like, "Buddy, you don't know who you're talking to." And so he leaves, so we go and everything like that, and for whatever reason, I listened to him, and I took half of them. I ate half an eighth, and I was tripping really well. Just everything's good, everything's going good. Night kind of goes on for a couple hours, and I feel like I'm coming down. It's like, oh, okay, that's why they're so potent, because they only last for a couple hours. So then I eat the other half, and eventually we end up back by our campsite. There's me and Zach and probably 20 or 30 other people that we've never met around this fire. So I'm just sitting around the fire, just staring at the fire, because that's fun to do when you're tripping. And I was thinking to myself, like, "Oh, I gotta pee." So I get up and I walk over, and I was gonna go pee behind my car. I actually had my mom's car because my car was messed up. So I go to pee, and for whatever reason, because I'm tripping balls, instead of peeing, I just open up the door and I sit inside the car. And when I sit inside the car, it was the strangest experience I'd ever had up to that point. And I just remember thinking, it's like, wow, like I've never felt such a radical, like I almost felt like in there, it felt like everything was crystal clear and I wasn't even tripping anymore. It was the strangest thing. So I sit in there, I'm just kind of thinking that, and then I was like, wow, this is really weird. Like, I've never experienced that. Like, I've done lots and lots of drugs and lots of different circumstances, and I've never experienced anything like that. It's weird. So I'm just sitting here, just kind of reveling in that experience, and then where I was sitting by the fire, and Zach was kind of across from me talking to these two girls, and there's a couple guys on either side of me or whatever, and I'm sitting in my car, and I'm looking, I'm just watching everything, just because I'm tripping, I'm just taking in the scenery, and so I see Zach get up and walk around the fire, and he's going over and talking to the dude that was to my left. And at first he was like, so I assumed Zach's buying some weed, or who knows what he's doing. And so, but then like Zach like stumbles on him, and he gets up, and it's like, and then he stumbles again, and just that and the other. And like I could see that these dudes were getting aggravated. I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta go take care of Zach because he's about to get beat up by these hippies. So get out of the car, get up and go over there, and I'm walking up to him, and I'm like hard and cheerful. I'm about to try to diffuse a hostile situation. So I'm about to just, hey guys, how's Zach, how's you doing, whatever. So I'm walking up, and by the time I get about 3 feet away from Zach, like I'm about to reach out to him, and he disappears. And I just stop. I look over, and he's sitting right down there with those girls, just like he was. I'm like, what is happening? And so I just sit down on the ground, like my heart drops into my stomach. And the thing is, I've done lots and lots and lots and lots of drugs, and I don't hallucinate. I've never hallucinated, no matter how much acid or shrooms or combinations of acid and coke and ecstasy, whatever. I've never been able to achieve visual hallucinations to my best efforts. And all of a sudden that just happened. So I sit down and I'm thinking to myself, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen to me anyway. I know it happens to other people, but that doesn't happen to me. I know that. I've done it. I've tried. And so I'm just sitting there, and the more I think about it, the worse I start feeling. And I've been just running it over and over again in my head, and like every time it goes through, I just get sicker and sicker and sicker feeling. And then I remember getting to this point where I feel so awful, and I just think to myself like, oh, I do not want to be here anymore. And as soon as that thought enters my mind, this girl stands up and throws her arms up in the air, and she says, I don't know why anyone would want to be anywhere else than right here, right now. And I just remember thinking, what? What is that? And then I just started processing this thing that it seems like I had this thought, and then she did something that was the exact opposite of my thought. And then the more I think about it, everybody starts talking around me about how great everything is. And everything's great. I could hear all these different voices talking about how great everything is. And the more I heard it, the worse I felt about it. Like I was like, oh, like just having an absolute mental breakdown. Like more than just like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. Like I was on the verge of losing it. And so they're just everything's so great. Everything's so great. And then I remember just like, no, this is not great. It's not great at all. And then all of a sudden I hear these people over to the left, to my right, and I hear the guy say, yeah, I didn't really know what to think about Lee when Zach first brought him, but you know what, he's pretty awesome. And then everybody starts talking about how great I am. And I'm just like, wait a minute. They don't know how great I am. I don't know any of these fucking people. I need to get the fuck out of here. And so I'm just sitting there freaking out. And I was like, I gotta go. So I'm just telling myself, just get up, Lee, just get up. So then I get up. I stand up, and as soon as I stand up, everybody turns to me. What the fuck is wrong with you, man? Why don't you just fucking relax and have a good time? And so just like everybody. And so I just do a beeline to my car. And then I just go and I sit in the car, and I close the door. And I'm just sitting in there, just like, what is going on here? So I go through this whole giant process of thought of how things were seeming to be interacting with my thoughts. Like I was doing nothing but sitting still staring at a fire, and it seemed like reality was reacting to my thoughts. Like, well, this is really strange. I don't like this. And then a light bulb comes on, and it's just like, that's not real. If it's responding to my brain, if my thoughts are able to have an influence over it, then it's not real. And then it's just like, I live in the fucking Matrix. And that's an interesting thing, because like the possibilities that my mind has been allowed to entertain, or that the things that I've been allowed to entertain over the course of my life. Like I remember seeing The Matrix, and when I saw The Matrix, the thought is just like, I feel like this is kind of real in a way. And then taking that even a step farther back, I remember being about 7 or 8 years old, walking down my driveway in Texas, and the thought comes into my mind, like, what if nothing's real and all my memories are just programmed? And then the thought went away, and then I just kind of, it didn't bother me because I was just whatever. But I distinctly remember having that thought. And now as an adult, thinking about having that thought, I think that's a really strange thought for a 7 or 8 year old kid to have when he's like walking down to go play in the creek or something. So anyway, taking it back. So I have this, I'm in the Matrix. Well, how do you get out of the Matrix? A phone call. So I pick up my phone, and I hit talk. I just push talk on the last person that calls. So the phone rings, somebody answers, and I say, get me the fuck out of here. And they're like, Lee, what are you talking about? Get me the fuck out of here. I know what's going on. Get me the fuck out of here. And then, so they're just laughing at me and hysterically. I'm very, at this point, I'm getting frustrated. So I'm explaining to them that I know what's going on, that I'm done, and I need to get the fuck out of here. And they just keep laughing and keep laughing and keep laughing. And so I close my phone. No, take a step back. Before that happened, I was entertaining the thought. When I was entertaining the thought that things were happening according to my brain, I felt, I need to be scientific about this, so I need to test this. So I thought to myself, well, okay, if it is in fact the case that my brain is conducting reality, then somebody's going to come up to the window and tell me to get out of the car. And no sooner than I say those words out loud does Zach stand up and walk over and come knock on the window and says, Lee, what the fuck are you doing, man? Just come hang out. And I remember I pushed the lock button on the door, and I started melting down. And then that meltdown and turned into the realization about the phone call. And then when that didn't work, I just closed the phone, like threw it. And then, what do I do? What do I do? And then I hear an audible voice say, drive. So, well, what do you mean drive? Drive. So what do you mean drive? Like turn on this car, turn on this fake car? Like I just realized everything's fake. So turn on this fake car and drive down all these fake roads and do all this fake stuff? Just drive. And somehow that interpretation in my brain turned into me turning on the car, freaking out, having an absolute mental breakdown for a good portion of time, then hitting the car, putting the car in drive without ever turning the headlights on. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning and just mashing the gas pedal. And then I drove straight into a tree. Just smash. And then I'm just like, oh no, that didn't work. And then people just flood my car. You just killed people. You ran over kids. Just flipping out. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I'm looking at them and I know they're not real. And I'm pointing at them while they're telling me that I just killed people. I'm pointing at them, you're not real. You're not real. And then the voice comes back and it says, let go of your conscious self. And I fell into what I call a transcendental coma, where I was instantaneously able to detach my consciousness, my brain, me, the thinking, the interacting with reality part of me, that was still existing in my thoughts, but I'd somehow just detached from my brain. And while I was there, it was just in this weird meditative state or whatever, like this little thing on the inside would start, and it would just grow and it would grow. And as I was focusing and just in this state, it would just grow and it would grow and it would grow and it would grow. And then it would feel like it was about to explode. And then when it felt like it was about to explode, something would hit the side of the car and distract me, and it would go away. And then I could refocus and build it back up and build it back up. And I'd become convinced that when that thing exploded, that was going to be me coming into whatever reality was. And that's why they kept distracting me every time it almost exploded. But the thing was, I felt completely safe because I determined that they weren't real, but inside my car is where I was. Well, obviously it was real. And so I felt utterly safe inside the car. So they would break my concentration, I would build it back up. And then eventually they got into the car. And I just remember thinking like, oh no, they're not supposed to be able to do that. And then, so they're grabbing me, and I was in this meditative state when I had this feeling over top of me, and they're grabbing me, and they're pulling on me, and they're pulling on me. And they couldn't move me. There's all kinds of hands and legs pulling on me. And then they were able to distract me. And then once that feeling went away, they could drag me out of the car. And then once they dragged me, I just remember my body just flopping onto the ground. And then just at this point, I'm in my detached mind, I'm freaking out. And it's like, no, I gotta get back to that state because they can't do anything to me when I'm in that state. And then so I get into that state. And I'm laying on the ground and they're trying to pick me up. And I remember 6 sets of hands on me. And they're trying to lift me up. And while I was in that state, they couldn't pick me up. And then they were even talking about like how heavy I was and how that like they were all kind of baffled by the fact that they couldn't move me. And so they couldn't move me. So then they quit trying to move me. And they were saying like they thought I'd OD'd. So they're trying to do all these things to wake me up and to kind of get me back into consciousness. And I remember they tried to smelly salts and all kinds of stuff like that. And I was attached. They were doing all kinds of stuff, and I wouldn't respond to anything. And then I remember at one point they were pouring water in my mouth, and I was spitting it back up, but I wasn't coming back to consciousness. And I remember they were really confused by that. But the most interesting part of that particular part of the story is, so once everything else fails, they're just like, okay, I'm just gonna beat the shit out of him, and hopefully the pain will make him wake up. And so there's a guy in my chest, and he's punching, like smacking me and punching me in the chest and like smacking me in the face. And I remember just slamming his knees into my ribs, just boom, boom, boom. And I was laid on the ground kind of like this. And at one point, after trying all these other things, he comes up and he puts his knee right in between my bicep and my bone. He starts grinding it into the ground. And I remember thinking, it was the strangest thing ever, because I'm in this weird detached state. I could feel the pain, but I was completely detached from it. And I remember thinking to myself in just a very curious way, this is the most excruciating thing I've ever felt. And as soon as I thought that, in the blackness of the emptiness of my mind, like a camera flash was an image of the crucifix of Jesus on the cross. And I didn't have any time to process it, but it just came and went. And then eventually they were able to break me my just whatever it was and get me up against the car. And then eventually they send me to the hospital. So they come and they put me in the ambulance. They drive me away multiple times. I'm not playing this game anymore. And so like my mom comes to the hospital and she's crying. I'm like, nope, not playing this game. So after laying there for hours and hours and hours, I started thinking to myself, like, okay, well, it's time to be a little more rational about this perhaps, because this isn't working. So, okay, so the story's almost over, this part of it. So I decide, fine, it's okay, well, this isn't working, so I'm just gonna open my eyes and we're just gonna deal with this and we're gonna figure out how to navigate this. So I open up my eyes and I'm covered in all kinds of stuff. I've got a catheter in and all this, that, and the other. And the nurse is sitting next to me reading a book, and I just look at everything, and I look over at her and I say, take this shit out of me. And she just jumps and she's like, and she just starts stumbling over words like blah 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 blah. I'm just like, take this shit out of me. She's like, you were in a car wreck. Listen, I wasn't in a car wreck. I drove my car 20 feet into a tree. Get this shit out of me. And then she's like, oh, I gotta call the doctors. So the doctors come in and it's like, hey, nothing's wrong here, so whatever. So obviously all the paperwork checked out because they didn't know why I was in a coma. And so then I call my mom and she comes to pick me up, and when she gets there, I just look at her, it's like, I don't want to talk about it. And she knows, so she's been through some things, like so we go. And I go home, and I just go home and go to sleep. I just go home and lay down on my mom's couch and go to sleep. And then I wake up to a phone call and a voicemail. And I check the voicemail, and it's the person that I called when I was in my car. And they left me a voicemail, and they said, Lee, what the fuck happened to you last night? You left the craziest message on my answering machine. And I'm just like, oh, I didn't leave a message. I fucking talked to somebody. So I just go instantly into freak out mode, just like, oh, what is going on? Because like I just came out of sleep, just woke up and right back into it. And so I'm just sitting there freaking out thinking about everything. And I thought to myself, like, well, I kind of had this vision of like being on the side of the street just like shaking back and forth because nothing's real. And I was like, well, that's not a good idea. I don't want to do that. So how about we just play this thing out and see where it goes. And so went over to my buddy's house. We ended up, his weirdest thing was like, it was like Groundhog Day. It was like the same 2 or 3 days happened like one after another. Went over, hanging out, smoking weed, ended up going out to the beach, and then ended up going out to our one buddy's house and having a big party. And then the next day it was the exact same thing. And then on the third time it happened, it was on Friday night and Saturday night. And this was during the summer, so I think it was coming into Sunday. And I don't know. Anyway, so the last party, they talked about this other girl that was going to be there, and I just remember, whatever. So this, that, and the other. I meet this girl, and we start dating, and I come over to her house. It was her parents' house. And there's a book sitting on the counter. And the second I saw that book, the little understanding voice thing that pops up every now and then says, you need to read that. So I pick it up. I'm just kind of looking at it, and it's like, oh, okay. And so I just kind of read. There's not a lot about it. It's just people praising it and this, that, and the other. And then, so I asked her, I said, hey, can I borrow this book? And she's like, oh, it's not mine, it's my friend's. I said, I will bring it right back. I have to read this book. And she's just like, okay. So anyway, so I start reading this book, and it's about this dude who grew up in the Methodist church, had a big realization about Jesus not being in church and how he needed to go find Jesus where Jesus was, which is amongst like the poor and the destitute. So I guess this dude goes off and does some stuff with like Mother Teresa and stuff. This is clear back in the day, but so anyway, in the whole process, like, so he goes off with Mother Teresa to go find his purpose or whatever. I never finished the book because in the process of the book, in reading the book, what it inspired in me was that, well, I need to find God. Like, I absolutely need to understand what's going on because this isn't cool. And so he went off to some far off desolate place to go find God. So I was like, oh yeah, that's what I need to do. So I need to go to church with that guy that I worked with I need to go. I need to get a hold of Jordan. I need to go to church with him, and then I need to go on like a mission or something, because that's whatever. In my mind, that's what you did. So I get a hold of him, and we get there. We go to church. Then the girl I was dating came with me, and so we're right up in the front row. Like I'm in like this big giant, not quite a mega church, but big church, and then it had like 3 sections of seats coming out. I was in like the front corner of the inside of the right section, if you will. And so we get there, and the whole sermon goes on, this, that, and the other. And before the sermon starts, there's a guy there who's from some organization who's actually looking to put together a men's thing or whatever to go over and to go on a mission trip to Europe to plant churches. Which, now that I think about it, it's funny because like it started over there. The fact that we're going to go back and reinstate something that they've already gotten tired of is kind of ironic, but that's neither here nor there. It's just a funny thought. Okay, so I go there, and so here at the time I'm like, oh, this is why I came, like, and then the sermon goes on, everything like that, and everything's just kind of just a big, loud, energetic Baptist assembly, pseudo-energetic. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So the pastor goes up, and at the end, and he's like, if there's anybody here that feels God calling out their heart, just come up to the stage and give your life to Jesus. And I'm like, well, what does that even mean? Like, I need to do that, but like, I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know how to, like, what's, like, there's like 500 people around, nobody's going up. Like, I feel like I need to, but I can't do that. And so like, I prayed for the first time in my life, and I said, well, God, if this is what you want me to do, you need to send somebody else up there, and I'll follow him. And as soon as I opened my eyes, the guy walks past me. And it was a strange thing. It was like an energetic thing, because like it wasn't like, oh, thank you, God, for answering my prayer. I'm going to go do this thing now. It was like as soon as I opened my eyes and I saw the guy moving, it's just like I was pulled behind him. Like it felt energetic. It felt like a draw. So he goes up and he does the proper Baptist thing. He kneels on one knee and does whatever and does what you do when you answer an altar call. I, on the other hand, go up and just crumble to the floor and start bawling my eyes out. Meanwhile, there's like probably a 40-person choir singing, 500 people are participating. It's a very loud, intense environment. And so I just get up there and I just crumble to the floor and I just start bawling my eyes out. And I had the unquestionable realization that all of these things that had been taking place throughout the course of my life was God kind of trying to open my understanding, trying to call myself into him, if you will. The understanding that I had at the time was that this was God calling me unto himself, and I'd been rejecting it. Probably for whatever reason, I've just been rejecting it. And so like I knew it. I knew it to the core of my being. Nobody told it to me. Like I hit the ground and all of a sudden I just knew it. And I'm just crying and just bawling my eyes out. And then so I'm laying there, and then so the pastor comes and puts one hand on me. My buddy comes, the guy that I work with, Jordan, comes and puts a hand on me, and then the other guy comes. So I've got like 4 hands on me, and I'm just crying. And eventually I get to the point where I'm saying I don't recall if I was saying it out loud or not, but that I was done fighting. I'm done fighting. Whatever this is, whatever is going on, I'm in. I'm done fighting, and I'm just so I don't think I was actually saying it out loud, but so while I'm just saying that over and over again, I'm done fighting, and then it was like somebody came up to the mixing board and just dropped all the levels down to just a real faint, barely you can hear anything. And then all of a sudden, it sounded like I was in like the halls of Wall Street, and there's 10,000 people all trying to talk over top of each other. And then sporadically intermingled in the soundscape is kids playing and laughing and running around, just like the very distinguishable audible sound of kids just playing and having a great time. And I don't know how long that went on for, but it went on for a good little while. And then it was just like all of a sudden it was like that faded away and the music came back up, and then kind of the choir calms down, and the pastor's like, you want to come and talk to me? So yeah, I'm crying, I'm weeping. So we go in there and he tells me to repeat after him. So I repeat the prayer and I say the sinner's prayer, and then no, I'm a Christian, I reckon. So so then whatever he's like, so this is whatever he's like, hey, we need, like, he basically asked me if I'd be interested in a follow-up meeting, and I'm just like, yeah, like, here it is. I'm looking for some sort of discipleship. I'm looking for somebody to show me the way. So I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And so so then I kind of go on. And so to backtrack a little bit, like around the time that I met that girl and I had all these experiences, like all the craziness of the fake reality went away. Like, so there's this kind of period of peace for several weeks. And then I was to go to this follow-up meeting with this guy, with this pastor. And so it was like Tuesday, like 10 in the morning, because I worked a weird, I think I was working second shift at that point, so I had to be at work at 2:30. So anyway, we've got this meeting with him, and so I'm sleeping, and all the weirdness has gone away for weeks and weeks and weeks. So then all of a sudden I have this dream, and I don't particularly remember dreaming anything, but in the dream, that weird euphoric sensation that I had in the car, and that weird thing that was able to build up, in the dream it comes back. And this time it's just like a million times more intense than it ever was. And right before it exploded, I woke up. And I was like, oh, what is this? And then, so I lay back down, and I go to sleep, and it happens again. And I don't know how many, it happened at least 3 or 4 or 5 times. And so finally, on the last time, I wake up, and I'd like to say out loud, it's like, God, if this is you, show me, and I will stop resisting. Because I had this idea in my head that I was resisting. And then so I'm praying that, and I say that prayer, and then in the darkness of my mind, I see a big red 6 and another big red flaming 6 and another big red 6 in the shape of a triangle. And I freak out, and I jump up, and I grab my Bible, and I put it on my chest, and I go back to sleep. So I wake up, and I go to this meeting with this fellow the next day, and just kind of talking about some stuff, this, that, and the other. And he's like, so how's it going? And I said, well, I got a story for you. So I tell him, I don't recall how much he knew. I think I gave a brief kind of explanation of the fact that this is a reoccurring thing, and so I tell him about it, and he says, like, especially with this, like the 666 thing, and he says, well, I don't put very much stock into dreams. And I said, I wasn't dreaming when I saw the 666 thing. Like I woke up, like in frustration because I wasn't getting what I wanted, which was this thing exploding into reality or whatever it was. And like, I'm awake, and after 5 or 6 times, like, I'm just like, okay, God, whatever's going on here, you go ahead and do this. And then it happens, and I'm wide awake, and then I freak out, and I grab the Bible, and then I fall back asleep. So like, I kind of explained that to him, and he's, you see, being a Christian is 95% character and 5% something else. And then he shows me he literally shows me a pie chart and gives me a pamphlet. And I said, oh, okay. So I go off about my business, and then life kind of goes on. So kind of things ebb and flow and up and down, and I'm up and down, and I'm not sure what I'm doing, and this, that, and the other, and I'm having a real hard time because I'm participating in my old ways and this, that, and the other, and at some point I said, no, it's time to get serious. Like, whatever's going on here is real. We need to get serious. So, so basically, I have this. I don't want to tell every detail of the story, but so I get serious about this, whatever this is, and that meant going to this holiness retreat because I feel like I needed to be holy, because I remember reading that we should be holy as he is holy. So I was like, yeah, I need to be holy, so holiness retreat, let's do it. So, go on this holiness retreat, have a bunch of fun, sit through some seminars, and just went camping and played basketball and zip lining and skeet shooting and fishing and all kinds of good fun stuff. It was a great time. But then we get in the truck on the way home. It's Sunday morning, driving back, and then the stark realization hits me that, well, as gay old time as we had, I didn't come here to go ziplining. I was really hoping I was going to walk away from this holy, and I'm not. And so, So I'm just thinking, but then it occurs to me, like it popped right after I kind of have that thought. It pops into my head that like I recall Romans. Every time I heard the word Romans, it stood out to me, and I didn't know anything about anything. So I was like, well, I knew that Romans was a book in the Bible, one of the books. So I was like, like it seemed to be this little beacon that was going off. So I said, maybe I'll check that one out. So, because up to that point, it was just like, hey, like I would talk to people like about like things, and like I'd go ask a pastor a question, and instead of telling me things, he'd just be like, read this Bible verse, and that seemed to be the kind of go-to thing. So the only Bible verse that I knew little snippets like "Be holy, for He is holy." That's why I knew that Bible verse, is because that was one of the regurgitated answers I got when I asked a really deep, serious question. But so anyway, I start reading through Romans. Anyway, so I read through the whole. I read through into chapter 7, and in like roundabout in chapter 5, he starts talking about sin and being a slave. He started referring to this notion of slavery to sin, and it really resonated with me quite a bit. And at one point he says, like he's talking about sin and being slaves to sin, he says, whatever you give yourself over to do, to that one slave you are, whether to sin leading to death or righteousness leading to something. I don't remember it anymore. But anyway, I just remember thinking like, well, there you go. Like I am quite addicted to pornography and all kinds of other things, and drinking, and just being a madman, doing things that I don't like. It's these compulsions that I can't quite resist. They're just there, and they just draw me in. That which you do, it is to that slave you are, that which you put yourself to do. And so just kind of had this realization, okay, I'm a slave. There you go. Yeah, that makes sense. And then in the Baptist church, they say, well, we're all sinners. We're always going to be sinners. And so, but Jesus died for your sins so that we can go to heaven, so you just don't have to worry about that. And I remember just trying to really grab a hold of that, and it never really doing much for me. And then, so here it's talking about being a slave to sin. It's like, oh yeah, here that's what they're talking about. We're sinners. We're slaves to sin. So this whole thing about being a slave to sin, and then he's talking about the grace of God and all this. It's like, oh, that's exactly what they're telling me at church. Oh, we're sinners and we need grace and tra-la-la. And then he says, what shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? What? Certainly not. How shall we continue in that which we have died to, if in fact we have died with Christ and have been resurrected through baptism, all this whole thing there. And I just remember wait a damn minute, because at church they're telling me, try not to sin, but don't worry about it because Jesus got you covered. And then Paul's saying, well, you see, there's something else going on here. And so I kind of read through there and kind of keep going through, and we're getting into Romans 7. There's a part that says, Paul says, I see that there is in me no good. The good that I will to do, I find myself unable to do. And the evil that I don't want to do, I find myself doing that. I'm like, fucking A right, Paul. I know what you're saying, buddy. And I'm really resonating with that. And then he says, I see therefore it is not I, but it is sin that dwells in me. And I'm like, wait a minute. And he says, thanks be to God through Christ Jesus, who into him no condemnation, and all this kind of stuff like that. And then, and it's crazy because reading through that, the word freedom never existed in there, but when I read through that, what came into my mind is that you were born a slave. You become a slave in this world, and what Christ has come to do is set you free. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And the thing is that when I realized that when the awareness of freedom entered into my mind. So we'll take a step back. One thing I discovered, I'd always been a huge fan of sex and pornography. Introduced to pornography and masturbation before I hit puberty. So when I became a Christian, I found that pornography was a siren screaming at me in the darkness that I could not resist. And I would always fall into temptation on Saturday and then go to church Sunday. Oh, this wretched man that I am. Heartfelt brokenness. And so when I read all that stuff about slavery, pornography. That was the thing, because that was the thing that was holding me back. That was my crux. Like I could go out, I don't need cigarettes, I don't need drinking, I don't need weed, I don't need to do all the drugs. Like, but that one there, that's a tough one because I'm all by myself. Like nobody can smell that. You don't wreck your car because you're driving porn. Like, so, so just kind of coming to that realization of slavery and then freedom, and from that moment on, that dark yearning drawl for pornography went away, and then I came alive. Something inside of me came alive, and I just went. And so, without getting into any more details about that, I dove as far and as deep as I could go into the Bible and into becoming what Paul was talking about there in Romans. And so I did that. I did that for 10 years, 10 or 11 years, and just absolute devotion. And it's really interesting. Is in the course of that time, a lot of stuff happened. A lot of really crazy things happened. A lot of really interesting things happened, and I learned to follow these hunches. I would just get these hunches periodically about Christian concepts, and then that would lead me into at this rate I'd collected resources and stuff, and I knew how to. I had an understanding of Greek and Hebrew and stuff like that. Like I knew how to a degree. Like I knew that this wasn't English. That this wasn't written in English. So I'd been already minded to look into the original language and stuff like that. And so I would get these little hunches about stuff, and I would look into it. And every single time I looked in, like just a yearning, burning. It wasn't just like, well, I'm curious. This was just like it was like something that consumed my thoughts until I did something about it. And every time I followed it, what I found out was that what's actually written in the original language by the original people has nothing to do with what either A has been translated into English or has been interpreted into the doctrines of Christianity, which they use the English translations to kind of validate. Like that none of the concepts of the original, just flat out, none of the concepts of the religion of Christianity exist in what was actually written by the apostles or whoever documented the life of Yeshua and all that kind of stuff. So those experiences started building up over the course of a decade. It actually started within the first couple of years, and then over the course of a decade, after about 10 years of that, I was forced to get really honest with myself and be like, you know what, I can't say that I think this holds water. And so what I did, I went through the whole spectrum of the Christian religious experience, and the last thing that I finally encountered was the Pentecostal movement, and so that was just everything just falls in place. I've just been following the rhythm of what's developing in front of me my whole life. That's all I've known how to do. That I don't know how to make plans. I don't know how to stick to things. Like I just, if it's working and this is what's there, then this is what we're doing, and that's what we're doing. So that's what I've always done, and so just circumstances align, and here it is. Like the only thing that I've never encountered is this baptism of the Holy Spirit, this speaking in tongues, like this thing. And so that kind of becomes on my radar. Maybe this is a thing. And then sure enough, we meet this weird dude who goes this thing, and sweetheart's hanging out, and then he starts giving me these books and this, that, and the other. So next thing you know, there's this event that's going on, and we're invited to it, and we were getting together in this little meeting, and the little voice tells me, if you go to this meeting, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get the baptism of the Holy Spirit. So I'm like, well, then we're going to this meeting. So end up going into this meeting, and so we're sitting there, and they're singing this, that, and the other. There's prayers and this, that, and the other, and so at some point, once everything had kind of calmed down, this, that, and the other, like I hadn't received the Holy Spirit, so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go talk to that guy, the guy on stage. And so I go up to him and I was like, hey, I'm pretty sure God told me to come here tonight because I'm gonna receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And he was like, oh, okay. So he puts his hand on my head and he starts praying. He's praying. Like, and I feel something akin to that feeling that I had in the car. And the feeling that came back in the dreams is this sensation of filling, this like I'm being filled up with something. And it would fill up, and then I would overanalyze it, and then it would go away. And then it would fill up, and I would overanalyze it, and it would go away. And then I remembered in the book that I read, they were saying that in order to kind of initiate the whatever the experience is. Basically, that it describes the filling up sensation, and then it says once you're full, you have to engage vocally. You just have to start making noise vocally, and boom, the Spirit will take you over, and you're gonna start speaking in tongues. And so so it fills up and it goes away. It fills up and it goes away. It fills up and it goes away. And then I've remembered that book, that's what it says, is that once it fills up, once it's full, all you got to do is activate your vocal cords, and that's the engagement process. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. So it fills up, and then I start speaking in some very strange Arabic sounding language. Like it wasn't. I've been to other Pentecostal meetings, blah 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 blah, where they're just gibberish. But like I was saying syllables, and there was emphasis, and I had no idea what I was saying. And so it goes on and goes on. I don't know how long it went on for, but it goes on for a good bit. And then when it goes away, I was exhausted, and I just fell on the floor and started crying hysterical tears of joy. Hysterical tears of joy. And then once I cried it all out, I got up and I felt very compelled to just go up. I just felt very guilty for all the judgment that I had placed on all the people that I knew that I was there with, so I wouldn't apologize to them for that. Because I've always been a really judgmental person. And then so my brother-in-law was there, and he actually told me that he heard something while I was saying that. And it was something to the effect of, show me that you love me, show me that you love me. That's what he heard me say while I was speaking in this weird Arabic language. And another weird thing happened is I had a job with my buddy Craig, and he told me that one day he woke up to me in a dream. He made the joke of it like I was putting a spell on him or something like that, but that I was speaking in some strange Arabic language. And that actually happened well before that. The experience that he talked about right there, or that I just told you about, that happened well before this baptism of the Holy Spirit experience. And that's just a little interesting caveat. But so I have this experience, and then I'm just like, okay, well, I have finally found it. I've arrived. So I kind of start pouring myself into that, and I go to another event, and so we're up there by the stage, and like we're kind of going on and everything like that, and so there's like a whole ritual kind of behind it. I mean, it's kind of interesting if you don't let it weird you out, I guess. But so we go up there, and I'm there, and I feel it filling up, and it fills up and it goes down, it fills up and it goes down, and at this time I'm kind of weird because my wife doesn't really know how to feel about this, and so I'm kind of here, this, that, and the other. It fills up and it goes down, it fills up and it goes down, and then somebody walks up to me, puts their hand on my back, and whispers in my ear and says, "Brother, stop resisting." And I said, "Oh shit." So then it filled up, and I opened my mouth, and I spoke the language again. And then, but it wasn't quite as intense as it was the first time. It wasn't nearly as, it happened, but it wasn't nearly as intense. It wasn't as incredibly emotional as it was. It was still very intense, and it felt very euphoric, but like it wasn't incredibly emotional. And then I went to another event, and it happened again, and it was even a little bit less this time. And then because I'm a heavy contemplator, I'm considering all these things, and at some point it hits me. There's something about it, like it obviously is real, and it's obviously fairly intense. Like even the other times they were still very emotionally intense. They just weren't like drop me to the ground in exhaustion and tears, emotionally intense. Like that seems to be whatever. And so as I'm thinking through it, after having experienced it a few times, like just kind of let's see this for what it is. What is this? And it's like, okay, well, it is this feeling that is incredibly euphoric and intense that you can only get at a certain place. It happens while it's there, and then it goes away. You're no better or worse afterward. And then you go on about your business, and the only way to get it again is to go back there and submit yourself to the experience. And I was like, well, fuck, this is cocaine. That's exactly what this is. This is spiritual cocaine. And then I was like, okay, well, that's done. And then when I kind of realized that, and then like I was just kind of done. Like that was the last rabbit that I had to chase. I had nothing left to do. And then so at this time, like me and my brother-in-law and some other folks had been getting together in the mornings, having little men's group type of things, and for me, some real good came of that, and I think it was just because of the way my mind state was, because I was pretty well done with religion. I was looking for something that it at this point had proven to me that it's not capable of providing, which is just a real life altering experience, like permanent life altering experience, like absolute the depth of your being, like, because that's what I needed, because I was full of darkness. Like, this wasn't just I feel bad because I'm a mean guy, not to make fun of anybody else for whatever they feel convicted about, but like, I wasn't interested in having my sins forgiven. I was interested in having this abyss that lives inside of me dealt with, and it wasn't happening. And so we started getting together, and then I started and it was just this thing. It's like I remember I think my brother-in-law gave me this book. Somebody gave me a book called The Spirit of the Rainforest, and I remember I read that, and it just the wisdom that those shaman were sharing while those Christians were trying to indoctrinate them and steal them away from their heritage, the wisdom that they shared through that book unintentionally opened something up inside of me. And I started seeing all these connections between emotions and spirits and energy and stuff like that. I had no idea what it was at the time, but I saw it and I knew it, and it was absolute. And you're not going to convince me otherwise. And then so I kind of started going through this whole thing, and then and all of a sudden in this time period, I start realizing all these kind of things. Like now all of a sudden I'm starting to realize things about myself. Oh, now I'm starting to understand why I get mad at my wife when she does this, or why this bothers me, or this, that, and the other. Just like all these little connections are and it's showing me for the first time. It's showing I'm being dealt with, and it's not even some rule book that's saying, well, you got to deal with this, son, because it's bad. It's just like when I just realize something will happen, I'll just realize something, and I'll see some connection to my emotions and my wife and what she's doing and what I'm expecting of her and what she's not doing, and it's just all these different things, and so here's one interesting thing. So when I'm contemplating this, I've always been like a contemplative prayer, I guess. And so as I'm contemplating this, the voice comes to me and says, "This is what I meant." And so there's something that I skipped because I don't want to. It just didn't come up at the time, I guess. But so after I got married to my wife, that's a really wonderful story as well, in a good, exciting way. But I'm not going to get into the details right now. So me and my wife get married. We sell the business that her brother gives her, and this, that, and yes. We move to Middletown, and so one day we're in Middletown. And I'm laying down, getting ready for bed, and the voice says, "Stop trying to do things and just live your life." And I was like, whoa, like it just hit me like profound. Like it felt like it was one of those things where I don't hear an audible voice, but it's like what happens in my brain is what happens when you hear an audible voice. Like when somebody comes up and says something to you and you register it, the registering is what takes place. I just don't actually hear anything. And so the voice tells me that. And it's really intense, and it feels very true and authoritative. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. I go to sleep and I wake up and I forget all about it. So then I take a shower, and I'm in the shower, and then again, stop trying to do things and just live your life. And for a long time, what I remember that as stop trying to do things and just live your life before me. But I feel like to some degree that the whole before me part, because I no longer think that anybody's watching me necessarily in a weird way like that. So I think, when those things happen, we filter those things through our beliefs. So that's one thing, be careful with that, I guess. But so anyway, so here it is. I received that instruction, wisdom, discernment, whatever, about not. And then the thing is, I have a serious Messiah complex. Like I've always felt like I was very different. I've never felt like I fit in. I've always realized things differently, seen things differently. I've never felt comfortable in the world, like entertained, like the pop culture. Just a lot of that stuff doesn't interest me. There's just an underbelly of interesting things that exists in all of that I've kind of gravitated toward. But just generally speaking, the way the world is and how the world works, it's always felt really, really sticky and icky and kind of foreign to me. And I've always like the world needs to change. Like I've always had that mentality that the world needs to change, and then so with this experience, it kind of developed quite a bit of a Messiah complex in me with all these experiences that I've been having. Like there was a long period of time where I was about 85% convinced that I was the second coming of Christ. Because I'm just thinking through everything. It's like, well, why the fuck is all this stuff happening? This isn't happening to other people. I don't hear anybody else talking about this shit. So I was very quite convinced that of that to some degree. And then, so just kind of operating in that. So here it is. I'm trying to save the world. I'm trying to correct everybody. When I realize something, I'm trying to tell the whole world. I'm trying to convince you, and you're wrong, and this, that, and the other. You got to listen to me because I'm not going to tell you what I think I am, but you need to recognize type of stuff. Like that's kind of the way I operated in the world. And anybody that knows me that is here in this video, you're going to understand a lot of things based on the way that I was kind of carrying myself for those years. But the voice told me very early on to stop trying to do things. And then so now we'll go fast forward back to, this is what's a few years ago now. That was 13 years ago. This is a few years ago. This is what I'm talking about now, where I ran out of ideas to chase. So the whole time for that whole 10 years of being a Christian, every time I'd get excited about one idea and I would chase it as far as it would go. And then it would die. And then I'd find a new one. And then every time I ran to the end of one, a new one would appear. And then after the Holy Spirit thing, another one didn't appear. I'm just like, well, I don't have anything to do. I was like, well, I'm just going to live, I guess. Like subconscious, like just that's all I'm just going to do what I do. Like I have whatever. So I'm just living. And then so when I began to question, well, why is it now all of a sudden I'm realizing all these things? Like I'm not even religious anymore. I don't even read the Bible anymore. I'm not praying all the time. Like I'm not engaged in that culture anymore. And now all of a sudden, all these things are kind of coming to me. And the voice said, well, this is what I meant 10 years ago, dumbass. And I was like, oh, okay. So then that whole process goes on. And in the process of that, I start getting honest with myself about a lot of things and end up being pretty discontented in my marriage and just in my life in general. Just feeling like, to a real degree, religion had led me into this life and I don't want it anymore. And just being really, really, really pretty negative and selfish about it now that I realize it in those terms, I guess. But I mean, there's an element of we have to be selfish. But whatever, to a degree. But so here I am, just in this place where things are kind of going like my whole life's just been an emotional roller coaster. I get excited and I feel really good, and then I just go way down into the abyss, and then I come back up, and it's just constantly going that. So then it kind of came to this thing where it's like the extremes weren't there anymore, so I wasn't getting like super excited and super depressed, but it really leveled out at a really shitty, unhappy place to be. And but I've always been cheerful and optimistic and stuff like that, so I've always been able to just kind of act all right, if you will. And so anyway, so here it is. After I ran out of ideas to chase religiously, and now here I am. And now things are starting to come together a bit more. So this is kind of interesting. And so, I quit doing a lot of things. I started drinking a little bit, kind of casually, just because I noticed it just allowed me a little bit of freedom that I'd forgotten existed because I'd brainwashed myself into being some crazy religious zealot. And so the alcohol kind of helped liven me back up and remind me that I'm human, I guess. And I think I liked that a lot, which is probably whatever. So, but it was never excessive. Like I didn't start like partying or anything like that, but just like I'm allowed to get a 6-pack of beer and drink a few of them if I want to. Well, if you've ever come from a harshly religious mindset, that you would understand why that is such a controversial idea. But So just, I'm allowing myself to entertain things. And then, so about a year ago, I came to the point where for a long time I've been entertained, like marijuana's been popping into my head. And then no, it's useless. I used to be a stoner. I know what that's about. There's no good there. I mean, yeah, it could have some health benefits, but no. And I just brushed it off and brushed it off and brushed it off and brushed it off. But it just keeps coming back. It just keeps coming back. And so, having come to this place, is the first time that it kind of came back, and so now I'm in a bit more of an open state. So I begin to contemplate. Well, let's entertain this. Let's entertain this without accepting it. So I started entertaining it, and just kind of thinking about it and the benefits and this, that, and the other. And I remember it used to give me anxiety and stuff like that, and that's why I quit smoking weed, because it started giving me anxiety. I was like, well, this is dumb. I'm not going to do that. I already feel bad enough. So so I began entertaining just the possibility that it's natural. Like there's no evidence that it's some conjured up thing. Like I mean, it's very natural. We have receptors and this, that, and the other. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. Like, well, we have receptors. What that? Like I'm picturing like a plug or something in the wall. And I guess at the end of the day, it kind of is like that, but just in a different way. But so I begin allowing myself to entertain the idea that perhaps God gave us weed because it's here and it exists and it has a very profound effect. And then I saw a clip of Mike Tyson talking to somebody, and he's talking about weed, about marijuana and how he uses it. And he talks about obviously how it's demonized by religion and other things like that. But then he talks about how the fact is that our bodies have receptors that hold on to it, that like your body knows how to deal with toxins. Like when you drink alcohol, your body goes straight into detoxification. Barbiturates, all these other things. There's a lot of drugs or whatever. Like there's certain chemicals that your body identifies relatively as toxins and begins an immediate process of detoxification, which happens over the course of 2 or 3 to 4 days, depending on your metabolism and a lot of other variables. But the point is, the body knows how to identify toxins and eliminate them, and your body doesn't do that with weed. And then so I looked into it a little bit deeper, and so it turns out that like the CBD2 receptor that exists in the body, there's billions of them, and they're really interesting because like your body doesn't have a cocaine receptor. Your body reacts. The cocaine interferes in different ways, and that's what most of these other chemicals are doing. Is they're interfering with their presence changes things, and it puts up roadblocks and it opens up things, and that's what some of those chemicals do. But weed doesn't do that. THC and CBD, the CBD2 receptor in the human body, it does absolutely nothing except for hold on to THC and CBD. And depending on your metabolism, it'll hold on to it for up to 3 months. And when I realized that, well, wait a minute, that's what your body does with things that are supposed to be there, like vitamins and shit. Like your body has vitamin receptors because your body wants them. Like the reality that our body has an apartment for weed. And if weed's not there, nobody's in there. It's not being taken over by somebody else. It is literally dormant if it's not retaining those 2 nutrients. And so that allowed me the freedom to then begin to consider other things. You know what? I've got connections. I'm gonna go buy some weed. I'm gonna enter this scientifically. And so I go and I start using weed scientifically. So just small amounts and whatnot, and I find that I'm able to get into a really good state of focus and clarity and even energy with really small doses of weed. Like sub-perceptible, barely into the head change range. Like it seems to have a really positive effect when you're engaging in other activities. So I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I like that. So then one day, I got off work early and my wife's not gonna be there for a few hours. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get good and high because I haven't done that in like 10 or 12, 15 years. Like, let's do this. So pack up a bowl, and I'd gotten some stuff for the garden. Pack up a bowl and I smoke it. And then I started unloading all this stuff, and about 15, 20 minutes into unloading all, I finally get all this stuff unloaded, and I'm like, I'm entirely too high to be doing anything. I don't like this. This isn't fun. I don't want to do this. So then, but like it's just like it's like I just want to lay down on the ground. So I go inside, and I sit down, and I'm just doing what I'm doing, and like I try to drink something, try to eat something, but I'm just being drugged down. I was like, well, this is weird. So I just decided, okay, well, I can't do anything about it, so I'm just gonna lay here and just deal with it, I guess. So I'm laying there, just kind of just resisting the draw, just because I feel crappy, so I'm just kind of resisting it. And then the remembrance that it just occurred to me that this feels very similar to that feeling. Like this is, and just all of a sudden it came into my awareness that what's happening right now is spiritual. And I said, you know what? Let's see where this goes. And so I just put my forehead down on the table and just let loose. And then I just went and I just started going. And it was the most incredible thing. As my forehead is on the table, I can feel the vibration. And then it registers that that's the table's vibration. And then I could feel that vibration, and then I felt another vibration, and that's the floor. And then another vibration, and that's the chair. And it just spread out like that. And then eventually, like it like developed like a mental digital image of the world in vibrations, and I could identify the trees outside by their vibrations. There's vibrations that I was feeling. There's multiple levels of vibrations, and I could distinguish the tree's vibration 15 layers away from the chair that's under me, or from the floor, or from my dog over there, or whatever. And so it's going really fast, and all the sounds outside are incredibly intense, and it's just, and I hear all the vibrations, and I'm just, and then it stops. And then the voice says, this is the point of no return. If you keep going, everything changes. And I said, is that what I want? Do I want to explode into the mystery? Because in my mind, that meant everything changes. The whole world changes. Every life changes. Your wife changes. Your whole everything's changing. This is something different. That's the understanding that I had in my mind. And I thought that through. And I thought to myself, it's like, well, wait a minute. Like since all this stuff has kind of happened, like it feels like I've been like I've been a progressive development of understanding that's been really beneficial to me. Like it seems really strange that God would do that and then bring me here to this place where it's like, okay, now abandon all of that you've been working on and traverse into this mystery. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to continue following in this path that I'm on, despite the hardships that exist there. And then, but that draw was just there, and it kept pulling me. And I remember eventually I go in, and I go to the bathroom. I'm sitting on the toilet, and it's dragging me down. It's just dragging me, and I'm just like, oh, I just want to get up. I really couldn't get up. It was so intense. And then eventually, I just mustered all of my strength, and I get up, and I pull my pants back up and everything. And I go, and I just go out, and we have a bathroom we have a master bathroom in our bedroom. So I come out, and then I just lay down on the bed. I just flop into the bed, and we've got a real cushy bed, and I just sink into it. And it is the most comfortable thing I've ever felt in my life. And I'm just like, oh, it's like I'm laying on the clouds. And then all of a sudden, I feel the vibration of the sheet, and then the pillow, and then the blanket, and then the bed, and then all of a sudden I am back in this vibrational, digital, imaginary soundscape. And everything is wonderful. And then the voice comes to me and says, and like all these things are vibrating, and then the voice says, this is your life. This trailer is your life. This property is your life. Your job is your life. That woman is your life. This community is your life. This is what you need to be paying attention to. Stop focusing on all this other shit and pay attention to this. And I just started bawling my eyes out. I was like, oh, it's this realization of neglecting what's right in front of me for all this digital bullshit that I've been obsessed with for a few years now on the internet. And so just had this real huge realization, and then so I'm just crying, and then I calm down, then I realize it again, and I'd cry again. And this was a full-on psychedelic experience. So then my wife shows up, and she's got my nephew with her, and at this point I'm still really high. I'm still in this space. I was like, I don't want to be around my nephew because that might get weird. And so she comes in, and she's like, hey, what's going on? And I've got tears in my eyes. I'm like, ah. She's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And she's like, oh, you sure? I'm like, yeah. And then so she just goes out, and she's just hanging out with my nephew, and it was the strangest thing. Like I'm just sitting in there, just crying, listening to her talking, just listening to all of her little antics and everything like that. And it was the strangest thing. Like it's like I fell in love with her. I can't even say all over again, because a feeling and appreciation for her welled up in me that was never there before. It was like, and I mean, I think it was just lack of attention, lack of whatever. But so anyway, just this well of love and appreciation for her just like swelled up in me. So then eventually she takes Maddox home, and everything's kind of hunky-dory, and kind of tra-la-la, life goes on. And I'm like, okay, well, that was intense. So then I'm kind of going on, and so I've been working out, and I started getting real serious about learning guitar and stuff like that. And those are big factors too. Like at one point when I was done with religion, one of the things that came to my mind was that you've never been dedicated to anything in your whole entire life. You're 35 years old, and then you have dedicated. You don't have any real direction or dedication. That you're just whatever. And it seemed like a negative thing. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I should get dedicated to something. Maybe I should really put some real focused attention into something, particularly because it's just been really scattered. And so eventually I landed on guitar. I started playing guitar when I was 15, and I've just messed with it for 20 years. So I might as well. I can already do it, so I love it. So I might as well get back into it. So I did that, and it was really interesting. But just the psychological shift that happened from a couple of years of devoting myself to learning and getting better at guitar and creating with it, and then that turned into things like about health, and just kind of realizing realizing that there's a lot of stuff in my life that I'm neglecting. One particularly is myself, my body, my mental, my psychological status, and my physical body. I've just been drifting my whole life. And so it's like, well, instead of drifting, let's maybe kind of make our own rules up. Because like I had this grand realization that everything's bullshit at some point, that nothing is real, like that. Not to say that whatever, not like, but just like all the religion, all the politics, it's all made up. Like it's all a big giant game that has been given to us. And kind of realizing that the thing that I was resisting my whole life was being absorbed into that machine that wasn't actually real. There was a rejection of that was subconscious my whole life. And then at some point I realized, because I realized that everything that I look into falls apart. If you look too deep into religion, it all falls apart. In terms of it being a reasonable thing. And same with politics. If you look at politics, and the thing is, everybody knows politics isn't reasonable, but you guys still want to entertain it because it's too fucking scary to think that it's not real, that it's all a fucking sham and it's some weird control grid that we live in. But it is. And so what I came to realize was that I don't think anybody has a goddamn clue what's going on around here. And in that, I'm free to fucking figure it out and just go do what I'm gonna do. And so that's what I started doing. So that was kind of the fuel behind the whatever the past bit of story that I'm kind of telling you, is just coming to that realization. And so I started kind of, okay, I like guitar. I feel like I want to be healthy. Like the picture in my mind of me is healthy, is in shape. Like, so I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna pursue that. If that's my ideal picture, why the fuck wouldn't I pursue that? Like. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna try to be whoever I want to be, because fuck you if you want to tell me any different. That's why. And so getting into that, so my whole life changed. My buddy owns a barbershop, Neil. He cuts my hair. Telling about working out, this, that, and the other. He's telling me about this thing that he's doing, and he posts something on Facebook one time like, "Hey man, I need to get with you one of these times to do some running with you." And he says, well, me and my dad are doing 4 miles out of Paint Creek tomorrow. You want to come? And I'm like, oh shit, Lee, what are you doing? So I said, sure, why not? And we go out, and my goal was just to keep up with Neil. And I ran with him, and I ran really well, and it was encouraging. And then did it again the next weekend, and I drank a little bit the night before, so running really sucked. And then he gets a hold of me on Friday, and he's like, hey, we actually had a runner drop out of the race. You want to take his place? And I think to myself, like, Lee, you can't run a fucking marathon, dude. You don't even run. Like, you've run like 6 times. Like, you don't run. And like, it was just this weird thing where like I knew that I was going to fail. And I told myself, like, you know what? I'm going to fail, but I'm going to fail trying as hard as I possibly can. Like, I'm going to fail at the extent of my limit is where I'm going to fail. And I kind of set that in my mind. And so I said, let's do this, man. So I sent him back text, and we would go and we do it. And so we go and I run, and everything's great. I do fantastic. I even get lost on one leg, so my 6.5 mile leg turned into an 11.5 mile leg that I had to run at, like, it was like 47 degrees. It was raining, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I finished the second leg the next day, and this, that, and the other. So anyway, so after that, I'm feeling good about myself. It's like, yeah, I got people that run telling me like, how the fuck did you do that? Like, anyway, so I'm feeling really pretty good about myself, mentally. Physically, I am in absolute pain. Like, I'm the next morning, Monday morning, like, but even Sunday evening, I couldn't walk anymore. So I texted my bosses like, hey, like, so I did this thing, and I didn't really know what I was getting into. And so I explained it to him, running a marathon. I was like, I can't walk. I will come back to work as soon as I'm able, I promise. And he just sent me a laughy thing. I was like, okay, don't worry about it. And so I'm laying there in bed, and I'm just in agonizing pain. It was like, I felt like I needed to stretch. Okay, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do that. I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna get a hot shower and I'm gonna stretch out in the shower. So I get in the shower and hot water's pouring over me and I start stretching. It's just agonizing. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not doing that. And then the voice comes to me and says, you can either do what's difficult now and perpetually make things better, or you can do what's easy now and perpetuate the hardship forever. And I said, fuck. So I bent down and I started stretching and I stretched it out. I've stretched through the pain and the pain only lasted a few seconds. Like once I stretched it out, it kind of dissipated. And then so I stretched over the course of the next couple of days and it was fine. And I was like, oh yeah, that's hell yeah, boys. Good stuff. So then I needed to mow my yard. So I go outside after a couple of days after I was mobile again. I think it was probably Tuesday or Wednesday after work or something. Because I think I only missed on Monday. I think I went back to work Tuesday. And so I come back and say, okay, my yard's getting out of hand. I need to go mow it. So I go to start my tractor up and it's misfiring and it will not move. And it's like, okay, well that sucks. And I was like, well, the yard is out of hand already. It's like, if I wait till the weekend, it's gonna be undoable. Like I don't have a push mower. The only thing I have is a weed eater. And I'm just like, man, I do not want to weed eat everything. So I kind of decided, no, I'm not gonna weed eat everything. I'm just not gonna do that. And then I remembered the voice. You do it hard now. Like, and then it's like, if I don't weed eat it now, it's gonna be out of hand. So whatever I do, I have to do it right now. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna start weed eating. So I start weed eating, and something magical happens, and we'll pick that back up on the next one. All right. So back to the story. Before I go on about the magical thing, I'm gonna take a step back to when I referenced earlier about kind of deciding that everything was bullshit and that I was gonna kind of make up my own rules. Well, the catalyst for that was after I did that marathon and everything went the way that it did. I was just kind of sitting around thinking about it, and I was thinking about how going into that situation, I fully expected to fail. I was absolutely certain that I could not do it. And then not only did I do it, I killed it. I did really, really, really well. And then, like, I realized, I was like, wow, like, I was limiting myself by the things that I believed. And that was a really profound realization. And then the voice comes in right behind me and says, you're limited by everything you believe. And I said, oh. And then I sat there and thought about that, and basically came to the realization that beliefs are limitations that do nothing but satisfy our doubts and our fears temporarily. That whatever you believe, you're putting a ceiling, because when you believe something, you think you understand it. And when you think you understand it, you put a ceiling on it. And then from that point forward, you can only go as high as your belief allows you to go, because that's just the way our psyche is developed. And kind of through the process of all that thinking, that's when came the idea that everything's bullshit, nobody knows anything, and I'm done being limited by beliefs. I'm going to embrace the mystery of life and figure this thing out. And so kind of going into that that's kind of whatever. That was the catalyst that kind of brought me to that place. And so with all of that, I had the experience where my tractor died, and I had to do something about my lawn, and the only thing I had was a weed eater. And as much as I hated the idea of trying to weed eat 4 acres, I said, well, I mean, that's the principle. If the principle is here, I'm trusting the unfolding of this thing that's happening to me. And the voice that seems to have my back told me that you do the difficult thing now and it'll get better, or you do the easy thing now and it'll stay difficult. So I said, you know what? Let's start weed eating. So I grabbed the weed eater, fired it up, and off I went. And so I started weed eating, and pretty soon into it, as I'm just kind of just in the zone, just whatever, just weed eating away, just mindlessly weed eating, the voice comes and it says, this whole thing is a game. And it's a game that is operated on a pendulum. And the pendulum is moved by the forces of energy that are in the world, the negative and the positive, that the pendulum swings back and forth within the spectrum of negativity and positivity, and that the world right now is overcome with negativity, and that is the explanation for the situation in the world right now, is that negativity has overpowered positivity and thrown it out of balance. It's not that negativity goes away or this, that, or the other. That the goal is not that one should exist at the demise of the other. It is the concept of balance. And then, I mean, nature teaches us balance very, very explicitly. And so anyway, so the voice tells me that this is a game, and the game is the game of overcoming, and that I'm not going to get into full details about all that, because I don't think that's going to be overly beneficial to a lot of people. But just, I received that in that moment, and then I received a bunch of details regarding the concept of this game and the concept of overcoming and the concept of the matrix that is the power grid that exists in the world, and all the beliefs and all the limitations that we accept and that we allow to hold us back, and all these different things. And so I received that, and then I finished weed eating that day, and I wasn't done because I weed eated for like 3 or 4 hours, and I wasn't able to finish it because it's a lot of weed eating. And then, so I'm just kind of blown away by that, and I go in and I tell my wife, I'm like, hey, guess what happened? And so I tell her, and then she's just like, oh, okay, whatever. So then I go out the next day to finish weed eating, and boom, voice comes and starts talking to me again, just explaining all of this stuff to me. And over the course of the next 3 weeks, whether I was weed eating my yard or mowing my yard, or sometimes driving my car, sometimes it's while I'm in the shower, sometimes it was at work while I'm on the forklift, anytime I went into autopilot for 3 weeks straight, just understanding about the nature of the world, about the nature of spirituality, about the nature of politics, the nature of psychology. It was just whenever I got into this state of autopilot where my body was focused on a mundane task, just the floodgates opened up, and I was just receiving just these downloads for 3 weeks straight. And then it stops. And then I'm just like, oh, okay. And so at that time, I've been playing guitar and everything like that, and I'm on YouTube a lot, doing backing tracks, and anybody who knows me, I'm always posting stuff on my Facebook with me playing guitar and stuff like that. So I noticed on my Facebook feed, I keep seeing all these interviews with Rick Rubin, and then I noticed it's all about creativity. And so eventually I click on one of them, just in the course of a day or two. I click on one of them, and then Rick Rubin is on there just talking about this book that he wrote and talking about these things, and he's saying all these things, and the things that he's saying are in the same ideological ballpark as all this stuff that I've been receiving over the past few weeks. And I'm just like, wow, that's odd, because I've never seen Rick Rubin anywhere. I've heard the name Rick Rubin, don't know anything about him. And then I finished this whole experience, and then like just as soon as it stops, I start noticing him popping up all the time, and the spidey sense, the little tingly inside me said, hey, check that out. So I did, and I click on it, and he's talking about all this different stuff about creativity and about spirituality and all these different things. And then I watch another one, so I just watch all these interviews, and here Rick Rubin is explaining in through the context of being a producer in music and stuff like that. He is reiterating all of these things that I received from the universe, and now here he is saying these things. And it was just, for me, it was just this massive confirmation, like, oh wow, something's going on here. And as a whimsical human being, I am open to fantastic possibilities. And so, what could this mean? What could this mean? Am I destined to work with Rick Rubin, or whatever's going on here, and this, that, and the other? And maybe I need to share my story, and maybe it'll get to him, and he can help me open up this creativity that's bottled up by all the bullshit that I deal with, and this, that, and the other. So I'm just going through all this and just kind of up and down, and what do I do? And then somewhere in the course of all of this imagining and wondering and whatever, and processing this whole experience, it comes into my mind that this whole thing started with mushrooms a long time ago. And maybe that's where I need to go. So I kind of ponder on that for a little bit, and I think about it. It's like, you know what? I think that's the thing to do. I think, but this time in the past, mushrooms were my escape from reality. I hated life, so mushrooms and acid and all the other stuff, it allowed me a temporary vacation. So this time, instead of escaping reality, it seems as though there's some aspect of reality that becomes clearer, perhaps, and even deeper through these experiences. And that's kind of just the thoughts that I'm entertaining. I said, so you know what? I'm going to go back in. Only this time, I'm going to go in as a scientist. I'm going to go in and see what's going on. I'm not going in to run away from anything. I'm going in to find something. I'm going to go knock on the door and say, hey, what's going on around here? And so I get a hold of an old buddy of mine and I say, hey, bud, can you get me some mushrooms? And his first response is, are you okay, man? And I just started laughing. I said, dude, you have no idea. I'm great. And then I kind of briefly explained to him that, like, hey, here's where I'm at. This is what I want to do. And he's like, okay, man. So, and it's really great that I have friends like that he was so concerned about me that because I went through this whole religious span, and so now all of a sudden here I am. So now here I am asking him for drugs, and so he's like, so the fact that he was concerned for me means a lot, and he's a really good friend of mine. But so he gets me these shrooms, and that's all right. Let's do this. So that following weekend after I get them, I go out. I'm sitting outside and I eat them, and I'm just kind of sitting around, and they kind of start coming on, and I was a little bit disappointed because it wasn't what I remembered them being. It was different. It wasn't as intense. It wasn't as magical. It wasn't this magical escape that it used to be. It was something different. I was like, okay, well that's a little bit disappointing, I guess. And so at one point I got up and I walked back into the house and I grabbed a bowl and I packed it full of weed and I smoked a bowl, or maybe I just took a couple hits off the bowl or something like that. And then I noticed that smoking that bowl seemed to kind of turn the volume up on the mushrooms a little bit. I said, oh, well, that's an interesting development. Okay, well, cool, okay. So I just kind of go on sitting around and this, that, and the other. And at some point I determined that I just wanted to go. I had a tent set up. I was just going to go camp out in the yard. And so eventually I kind of went over into the tent, and it had been in my mind that I wanted to listen to Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon, because I have a very vivid memory of one of the first times I ever took LSD, listening to Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon, and just in the darkness of my mind, just this shape-shifting, kaleidoscopic, color-changing thing that just happened along. It was like a music video that was playing with the music, but it was just shapes changing and shifting and colors and patterns, and it was and I guess I was, for whatever reason, it was in my mind to see what happens when we do that again. So I've got my phone and a little Bluetooth speaker, and I've got the album downloaded on my phone, and so I hit play, and I'm laying there and the music starts, and it's just kind of going, and I was like, okay, just kind of get 10 or 15, 20 seconds in, it's just kind of, okay, whatever. And then the voice comes to me and says, it's not loud enough. And I said, oh. And what I received from that was that neither the music nor the mushrooms were loud enough. So I took a few hits off the bowl, and I put the speaker right next to my head, and then I laid down and I started it back over. And just as soon as the music starts, I was teleported into somewhere else. And then a vision began. And in this vision, I started off where I was. Basically, I'm learning guitar, and I'm focusing on my music and this, that, and the other, and then I just progress through that, and then I join a band, and then we start making music, and then we start getting noticed, and then we go into the music industry, and then boom, it explodes, and I'm a rock star, and everything's great, and there's all the things that come along with being a rock star. And then in the middle of the vision, I realize, where's my wife at? Where's Heather at? And the voice says, well, she doesn't have to be here. And then my heart dropped into my stomach, and I felt so sick. And over the course of my marriage, I had these reoccurring dreams that would come in, and in these dreams, I would be just wherever, anywhere, and then I would be in some situation with another woman where I'm either having sex with her or whatever's going on, and then like I'll realize, like, wait a minute, I'm married, where's my wife at? And then I would just feel really sick, and I would stop whatever I was doing. And the feeling that I had in that vision when I realized that my wife wasn't there and I wanted her to be there, and then the voice told me she doesn't have to be there, that feeling that sunk down in my stomach, I connected, for whatever reason, there was just an instantaneous connection to those dreams, and I said no. And then so, in some weird way within the vision, I drug my wife into the vision as the bass player for my band, and then we went on together, and then just the whole atmosphere bright, because it was just super intensity, and then super dark sadness, and then just super beautiful wonderfulness. And then that goes, the beautiful wonderness kind of goes on, and then at some point during the album, it shuts off and it starts back over. The vision starts over. All of a sudden, I'm right where I am again, and I'm playing guitar, and this, that, and the other, and I have no recollection of the first vision. So I go through the whole thing again, and then I get to that point with, where's my wife? She doesn't have to be there. And then I drag her in, and then it gets all magical and happy again. And then it starts over again, and then I go back to the beginning, and I go through the whole thing again, and I drag her in again. And then at the end of this, the album's ending. And so mind you, the whole time this is going on, everything that I'm seeing and feeling and hearing and thinking is in perfect synchronization with the music. Either the melodies, or just the energy and the emotion of the chord progression, or even a lot of times the lyrics themselves were just, it was all just one cohesive thing that I was going in. I mean, it was literally a soundtrack for the vision. And so after the third, and mind you, the whole time it's going on, it is so intense that I was literally convulsing the entire time, just like basically having a seizure the whole time, but in a really exciting, good way. And so it goes through 3 times, and at the end of the third time is the very end of the album, when it just gets really, really mellow. And then the whole thing where at the end it says, the earth is, then the earth is, the sun is eclipsed by the moon, and then it just kind of, everything calms down, and then you kind of hear that little the heartbeat that kind of ends at the end of the album. And then when all the sound goes away, the voice comes to me and says, everything is all right all the time. Just do the work and don't get in a rush. And then I came back to reality, whatever you want to call this, reality. I came back to normalness. And I was like, oh my God, what was that? And then so I spend the next week or so just going in my mind like, what was that? Was that some prophecy? Was that, did I just have some weird Jesus in the desert experience where I had the opportunity to sell my soul but I didn't? Like, what was that? And I was just trying to rationalize through that whole experience what that was, and I couldn't come to anything concretely. It was back and forth and ebbing and flowing, and just the endless possibilities of what could be and what might be. And then I determined, and then around in that time, all this stuff starts popping up on my feed about psychedelic therapy. And then so I start looking at all of this different stuff and things, psychedelic therapy, and the idea of doing the trip thing, and then just being quiet and by yourself with little stuff like you having blindfold on, this, that, and the other, just kind of going through this whole process. And so I was like, you know what, maybe that's what I need to do. This is what seems to be coming toward me, and this seems to be kind of the energetic draw that is there. So you know what, I think I'm going to do this again. I think I'm going to get some more shrooms, and I'm going to pursue this kind of route. So I do that. I get a hold of my buddy again. I get some more shrooms, and then it was very, very interesting because I get the shrooms, and then I was going to do it on Friday after work. And so I'm driving home from work on Friday, and I get a notification on my phone, and so here's a little pause there. I've always been conflicted about the vacuumous nature of social media and the internet, how it just feels like it sucks you in, and then it feels sticky, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to me. Like, it just there's been times where the amount of time and energy and thought and emotion that was circulating within me through the social media experience was very, very negative, and this kind of been this ever-present thing where, like, I feel like I need to leave it alone, but I can't. And so that's kind of been an ever-present thing for years, really. And so I'm driving home from work the day that I'm gonna do this next trip, and I get a notification on my phone that says, somebody's hacked your Facebook, this, that, and the other, go through these measures. I was like, okay, whatever. I'll deal with that when I get home. So then I get home, and I don't know if Heather had already been aware of it or what, but so basically our Facebook wasn't just hacked, like it was gone. Like it was hacked by somebody, and then when you tried to follow the links, it pulled up some random guy, and everything. 15 years of Facebook is gone. And my wife was a little concerned about this because it's attached to our business and all this stuff like that. And she's like, oh no. And me on the inside, I'm like, what's on the inside of me is, well, God just did something for me that I was unwilling to do for myself. He took this thing out of the way for me so that I can move forward. And that was incredibly exciting to me. And so just the idea, okay, well, Facebook's gone. Wonderful. And so I'm getting ready for the experience. And so I have the mushrooms. But this time, I was very much inclined toward praying or asking, whatever. So before I ate the mushrooms, I held them in my hand. And I prayed to them, to God, to the universe, to whomever it was that was behind what was happening. I said, I'm coming to receive that which is for me. I'm submitting to this experience. I'm here for whatever it is that I need to receive from this. And so I eat the mushrooms. And so I'm laying in my bed, and they start coming on, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is it. This is the grand revelation. And I'm just kind of feeling the effects of the mushrooms, and nothing's happening. I'm like, okay, well, we'll just wait a little bit longer. Nothing's happening. It's like, okay, well, this sucks. Well, apparently this wasn't it, so I guess I'll just go outside and ride this out and whatever. So I go outside, and it's wonderful and beautiful because nature is wonderful and beautiful anyway, and then when you're on mushrooms, it's even more wonderful and beautifuler. And so I'm just kind of diddly bopping around, and then like I was so emotionally attached to my expectation of the situation that I was just kind of like, oh, this isn't happening the way I wanted it to, and whatever. But then in the back of whatever, in the back of my consciousness, like I could hear the voice saying, you need to let go. You need to completely let go. Complete surrender. And I didn't know what that meant. I was like, okay, well, what's that even mean? And so it's whatever. So I kind of go off, and at this point it's still daylight out. And then so I go and I sit by my fire pit. I don't start a fire. I've got a big pile of brush in there, and I didn't want to deal with a big giant fire in this particular mind state, so I just left it unburnt. And so I've got these railroad ties out by my fire pit, and so I was sitting in my chair at first and just looking at the stars and the moon, and just, oh my God. And so just looking at it, just getting lost in that. And then so just with what I learned about smoking the weed with it, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take a few hits off this bowl, and I'm just gonna get lost in the stars for a little bit. So I went, I've got this one railroad tie that's 6 or 7 feet long, so I just went to lay down on it. And so I took the hit, laid back on it, and then I became very aware that my phone was in my pocket. And then I thought to myself, so whatever feeling was inside of me was just like, I need to be disconnected from the world. I need to be disconnected from all the technology and all the stuff that is kind of binding me to the matrix, to this thing that I've been born into that I don't really seem to fit into. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I need to get this phone out of my pocket. So I take my phone out of my pocket, and then I realized that my dog, which is this dog that just happened to show up like 2 weeks ago, this probably 8-9 month old pit bull shows up in our yard. He's the happiest, most happy-go-lucky dog in the world. Our little dog was in heat, that's why he showed up. But I mean, presumably that's why he showed up. So anyway, so he's here. He's been around here for a couple of weeks, and he's a pup. He's rambunctious, and he just likes to get into stuff. So I pull my phone out, and I'm getting ready to just set my phone down, and I realize that Seamus, my wife named him Seamus. Seamus is like right next to me, eating like 2-inch branches that are in my brush pile right here, just crunching down on them, and just. And then it occurs to me, if I set this phone down, this dog is going to eat it. This dog's going to eat it. I just got this phone on Wednesday. It's now Friday. So I just spent like $600 on this phone because it's got a nice camera on it, because I've been doing my videos, and here it is. I'm holding the phone in my hand, ready to put it down and get lost in the universe. And I become very aware of the certainty that if I put this phone down, that dog is going to eat it. And then I got scared. It was weird. Like, I was scared and anxious about my dog eating my phone. And the second I felt that emotion, I got really, really mad at myself. And I was like, fuck that. I slammed that phone down, took a couple of big hits, and just laid down. And then I just got lost in the universe for a little while. And then at some point, I felt a very strong desire to be over in this other part of my property that is just a really nice, pretty, really magical feeling part for me and for my wife. And so I go out there and I'm just standing there. And I'm standing there just looking up at the stars and just doing what I'm doing. And then at one point I sit down, like I just want to be close to the earth. I felt this extreme pull to be connected to and close to the earth. So I sit down and then I lay down, and I'm laying down on the ground, and my dog's laying next to me, and he's just chilling with me, and he's licking me. He's licking my arm. And so I'm laying here on the ground, and I have this very strong sense that I need to be naked. I need to be naked before the universe. I need to be as raw and as alive and whatever as I can be. I need full connection to this. And it's like, okay, I need to take my clothes off. And then I realized that my dog is licking my arm, and he's licking my arm, and he's licking my arm. And I think to myself, I say, if I take my clothes off, this dog is going to lick my balls. And I don't want that to happen. And so I'm rationalizing through that. But then just surrender. Absolute surrender is the name of the game. Okay, I guess if I've got to have this dog lick my balls to achieve enlightenment, I guess I'm going to have to endure that. Whatever. So I take my clothes off and I throw them to the side and I lay down. And just as soon as I lay down, the dog gets up and walks away. There you go. And so I just lay there and I lay there and I lay there and I lay there. And I'm just engulfed in whatever. And then while I'm laying there, it comes to me, the universe speaks to me, the voice speaks to me and says, your perception is your own universe. The way you see the world, the universe that exists inside your mind, the world, the reality that you understand that exists inside of your mind is your own universe. And everybody lives in their own universe, and this universe is yours. And there's nothing that you can do for anybody else's universe. You can't save the world. You can't change the world. The only thing that you can do is live up to who you know you're supposed to be and allow that energetic example to permeate through the rest of the world and allow that to inspire others to raise themselves up and to better their own universes. And that's why the Matrix has given us all this parallel universe stuff. All these things. There's clues everywhere if we're paying attention. All the pop culture right now, it's all in there. Everything is sprinkled in there if you know what you're looking for, or if you're brave enough to follow the spidey sense and follow the tingle and follow the energy. But yeah, so it's just your perception of reality is your universe, and it is interlocked with everybody else's universe. And the only thing that you can do is live up to the fullest potential that you know how to, and allow that example to inspire others. And that's how you change the world. And with that, I said, oh, yeah. So then I get up, and then now I'm just standing on my property at, I don't know, it's probably midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning at this point. And I'm just standing there. And then so I'm just thinking through the implications of this and just reliving the whole experience. And I'm just full of just exuberant, like, pulsating energy, just like I was in that last one, where it's like pseudo seizure, like just so much energy that I cannot hold still. I'm convulsing. And then but I would ebb and flow. I would get into that situation, and then it would kind of die down, and I would fall into this absolute euphoria where I'm just floating in the clouds, but just the feeling of just absolute nirvana, if whatever, like bliss, absolute bliss. And the interesting thing is this took place for at least a couple hours. I ebbed and flowed between just absolute exuberance to just absolute bliss. I just ebbed and flowed back and forth between that. I don't know how many times over the course of what I assumed to be maybe an hour or two. And while that was going on, when I was in that explosive, exuberant stage, my dog is just running, just batshit crazy everywhere, just all over the place, barking and jumping on trees and everything in the world. And then when I'm in that super, super bliss state, he's laying on the ground, rolling around like making little grumbling noises, just. And then when I would get excited, he would. And every time it was one of the most affirming experiences I've ever had, because somebody just told me that my perception of reality is my own universe and that I have some weird degree of influence over it. And then I spend the next 3 hours watching this dog live out the most exaggerated expression of what I was feeling. I guess what is even exaggerated, because I'm convulsing and he's just going ballistic, running around, barking, jumping, happy as crazy as can be. And then when I'm in this super bliss state, he's just rolling on the ground. But just to have that experience of, like, I wasn't interacting with the dog whatsoever. I was so engrossed in my universe that I wasn't paying attention to the dog until I realized what the dog was doing. And then, of course, that just more exuberance, and then so that just went on and went on and went on and went on. And I remember that happening, and then kind of up and down, and it was okay, like it's getting whatever. And I thought to myself, and then, well, okay, so take another step back. So I'm laying on the ground naked, and then the universe tells me that this is mine, that my perception is all mine, that the whole of my perception, the whole of my reality is mine. Not that I own it, but that I am accountable for it. That somehow, in some weird way, I am accountable for everything that I notice. And we can get into some other things about what you're noticing and choosing to notice, and the idea of ignorance being bliss. But that's a different conversation, I guess. But so I have this realization, receive this understanding about me and my universe, and the universe very directly addressing my Messiah complex and this need that I have to save the world, and saying that that's not how you do it. You don't save the world by saving the world. You save the world by loving yourself, and then you love your neighbor as yourself. And then when I opened my eyes, the understanding that this is the first day of my life, that this is the first real day of my life. And then all of a sudden I understood what Yeshua meant when he said, unless you be born again, you cannot inherit the kingdom of heaven, or whatever. This is what being born again is that experience. And so then that's the exuberance. That's when the exuberance started. So here it is, come into it, everything's calmed down. I've been out here for hours. The effects of the shrooms are gone, and I'm just standing out in the field, and then all of a sudden I get so scared that I'm gonna go to sleep and wake up and forget all about it all. Like the realness of this energy is gonna go away when I wake up. I was like, oh my God, I don't want that to happen. So you know what I'm gonna do? It's the first day of my life. I'm gonna stay out here until the sun rises. And so I was just out there for a long time. And then eventually, just thinking about stuff and this, that, and the other, and eventually I decided I would rather be inside with my wife than out here, because I don't have the patience for this. So I go back inside, and I go to sleep, and then eventually I go to sleep. And then I wake up and I tell my wife all about it, and she's like, oh God. And so I'm sure she was freaking out quite a bit on the inside, because like, oh, my husband's a psychopath and whatever. So anyway, she didn't say that, but I assume she felt that. And so then from here on, I was like, okay, well, here we go. Here's the new reality that I live in. And so I'm just going about life, just doing my thing. And all throughout the course of the summer, every time I mowed my yard, I would receive something, and it was just, I just kept receiving it and just all this stuff. And then it got to the point where I was receiving new not necessarily new things, but development on top of old things, like some concept that I already understood, some practical element in life has just, I just see all these connections, and now all of a sudden I understand something more. And then so it's just every time I would do that, something like that would happen. And then every time I would mow, without fail, every single time I go out and mow my yard, I receive something. And I'm going through this whole process, and in the fall, the last time I mowed my yard, the last thing that I received as I was finishing up mowing, the voice comes to me and says, "You either learn how to possess yourself or the spirits possess you." And that hit me like a ton of bricks, and it connected something that I received about 6 years ago, connecting emotions to spirits. The way we get emotionally charged, we get angry, we do something, and then we regret it and it goes away, and now you're like, why did I do that? Well, what is the historical, ideological, cultural concept of possession? A spirit takes you over, it causes you to do something you wouldn't normally do, and then it goes away, and now you're left to pick up the pieces. It's about 6 years ago, I saw an eerily similar connection between emotional outbursts and spiritual possession / influence. And it was just this vague connection that I realized years and years ago. And then this last time I mowed my yard, you either learn to possess your spirit or the spirits possess you. And I knew exactly what that meant. It was addressing me and my emotions and my extreme emotions that I fall into, and basically telling me I need to get that in check. I need to learn how to control myself and stop every situation from being this catalyst that triggers me into some other thing. And so here I go from like probably October up until last weekend. It's just this process of realizing that when I'm not distracted and excited, I am depressed. And then for the first, like, I've always known the darkness was there, but I've never paid attention to it because I've always just distracted myself, and I distracted myself with religion. Before that, it was drugs and the experiences of life, of pleasure and whatnot. And then it became, obviously it started with drugs and stuff like that, and then it turned into religion, and then I ran out of ideas, and then kind of going through this whole thing, and now all of a sudden, like, I'm really conscious of the power of thoughts and the power of negative thoughts and the power of positive thoughts and negative emotions and positive emotions. So I'm at this point, I'm really mindful about what I'm taking in and what I'm allowing myself to think about. And that cuts off a lot of avenues for thinking. So I found myself and I got into meditation and stuff like that. And so, like, I'm at this point where I'm learning how to obtain a clear mind, to silence all of the chaos, and then just to kind of observe it. And that's when I realized that nothing's real, is that because once you get into that shit, you separate from yourself, and you are observing your own thoughts, you're observing your feelings. Like, you are you, whoever you are, whatever you are, is something that is present in the body, but with the proper training, you can step aside and say, oh, that's what this is. Okay. So anyway, so I'm learning how to navigate that kind of landscape, and what I realize is that when I'm not distracted, I am depressed. And then it's like, and I've been this way my whole life. And then so with all the stuff that the voice, the spirit told me, I'm navigating, I'm just walking out these things, and just, okay, so all of this negativity is attached to trauma. Like, that's what it told me. It said that all of these, everything that triggers you, you're mad at your wife because she's triggering you, she's triggering something inside of you that you need to deal with. This isn't her. It's not her. She's not the problem. The world's nobody else is the problem. All these things that are triggering you are not the problem. The problem is that you've got a wound that is festered and is rotten inside of you. And that wound is sensitive, and when people step on the wrong thing, it triggers it. It's not them that's upsetting you. It's you not understanding and knowing how to deal with yourself that is upsetting. And so I engaged in just the process of just living my life and doing the best whatever, and just sorting through the memories that I have of all of my trauma. And so I spent from December, or from October I mean, this is still an ongoing process, but a relative culmination happened last weekend. And so I'm going through this thing. So anyway, so I'm sorting through all these things, and for me there's about 5 key incidents that occurred in my life that I was led into really basically just going back and reliving them and learning how to accept it, or essentially choosing to accept it for what it is, and just understanding to some relative degree the nature that, like, the only reason anybody does anything is because they've been conditioned that way. So like angry people grew up in an angry, like, just like traditions are carried on, and like habits are carried on, and like I have a lot of violent, angry aggression that I'm really good at controlling, and I got that from my dad. My dad didn't raise me. My mom got away from that before I was able to get too much of it. But even still, it's still inside of me, and it's inside my brother too. It's inside of us. It's inside all of us. It's inside all the Walker males, I'm sure. But so anyway, so just seeing the connection between all these things, and just dealing with all of them, and just sitting with them, just sitting with the feeling, just going back and reliving these things that destroyed me, and just sitting with them and sitting with them and sitting with them until it's okay. And then when that one's okay, all right, let's go to the next one. And I sit with it, and then I sit with it, and then I sit with it. And these are tears of joy that you're seeing right now. So I would just sit with it, and I sat with all of them. And then I made peace with all my demons. And then the darkness is still there. Okay, well, let's whatever, the darkness is still there, maybe whatever. I'm thinking, well, maybe I need to trip again. Maybe that's what I need to do. And then I get a hold of my buddy, and he's like, yeah, you know what, dude, I'm not messing with anything anymore. Okay, well, there you go. That door's closed. That's not the avenue to take. The mushrooms aren't the cure. The mushrooms are a door. The mushrooms aren't going to save you. So I'm just feeling, just sitting with it. And then every now and then, and it just over the last few months, it's been a very, very rough winter. Over the past few months, there's just been these things, and alcohol became a really bad thing for me. Again, but even at this point in the worst way, where I would just coming and just realizing this in my mind, that I've dealt with all the trauma that I'm aware of, and yet this awful darkness, the abyss is still there. I can control it a lot better, but it's still there. And then every now and then something would happen, and it would be a progression of thoughts and just dwelling in this and that and being discontented. And so, I mean, I allowed a lot of negativity to cultivate in me leading up to these incidents. I can see all that. At the time I couldn't, just because I was wrapped up in myself and in the negativity so much, because it blinds you when you're in that state of mind. It blinds you. You can't see anything outside of it. All you can see is what validates the negativity. And so coming out of it, I was able to see the progression leading up to it, but then there would just be these triggers, and just like I would just break down, like the last one it was just something. And what triggers it is it's usually really pretty small too, but it's just like something happens, and then just rocket ship to the bottom. And so the last time it was like that, and it just comes out of nowhere sometimes. Like the last time it came out of nowhere, and like it started at work, and then like I come home and I was like, hey, you ready for dinner? And I was like, no, I'm just gonna go take a shower. So I go in and I get in the shower, and I'm laying and the water's pouring all over me, and then like I feel like I want to cry, but I'm not letting myself cry. Whatever social conditioning, or just, oh no, I'm tired of this shit, I'm tired of crying, whatever. Didn't want crying lately. So just resisting crying, and then intuition voice thing, cry, let it out. So then I started crying, and then 15 or 20 minutes later, it ends. I'm just on the floor of my shower, just weeping the most wretched tears I've ever wept. And then it kind of soothes down. It's like, okay, well, all right, maybe that was healthy. Maybe that's good. Yeah. So we get out. And I go out, and for whatever reason, going out and entering back into the room with somebody else's energy, walking in with my wife, like a lot of the negativity came right back, and she says, do you want to eat dinner? Or ready for dinner? And I was just like, no, I'm gonna go to bed. Like it wasn't like when I cried it all out. Well, I didn't like feel like everything was fine afterwards. It was just that super intense sadness wasn't there. The deep dark heaviness was still there. It just wasn't. It just the emotional intensity wasn't there. So I come back out, and then like I say, no, I'm gonna lay down. So I lay down, and then she comes and asks me something, and then I just for like 30 minutes straight, I just spilled my guts out of all of the torment and all the thoughts and all the things that I've been repressing and all of this stuff, and I just poured it out of myself for like 30 or 45 minutes straight, just crying and weeping and anger and sadness and everything just flowing up and down. I feel so bad for my wife. But so yeah, so just and then it just all pours out, and it was done. And then I get up to go get a drink, and then like all of a sudden I'm fine, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And then within the course of all these things, like because she's my wife and because she's around and because she's the source of a lot of my aggravation, a lot of my negativity was focused toward her, until I realized until I understood that all of my sadness was already in me, and it was just things not happening the way that I want them to are triggering these things and causing these reactions back into me. So kind of having the realization of all of that and how much I put her through unintentionally, just because of the brokenness and the sensitivity that I had, that I didn't know what was going on. And so that turned into lashing out at her quite a bit. Not a lot, but just once in a while in a really loud, dark and ugly way. I've never been physically violent. That's one thing that my life has been a series of seeing what's going on in the world and saying, I'm not fucking doing that. And my dad, being who he was, instilled a great sense of protectivity toward women, toward me. So the idea of hurting somebody else like that is just it's unfathomable to me. But anyway, just a lot of me just saying things that I don't actually mean, but I mean in the moment because I'm in such a deep dark place. Just a lot of stuff, and then when I realized that it wasn't her, when it just occurred to me that I've been taking out my own darkness on her, I felt so awful, and I just cried, and I was just like, I realized she's a fucking saint. She's a saint for dealing with me. Like, the fact that she has stuck around through this is unbelievable. Anyway, so anyway, I have that thing that there, and then like for a couple of weeks, I'm like, okay, you know what? I think this is it. Or for a little bit, but it was one of those things where like I was able to maintain a really positive, consistent mood for like a few weeks, and the thinking back, it was there, but I entered into this new weird reality where like I was able to be in this really positive mindset that was really good, but the triggers were still there, and then they would trigger stuff, and then but I got really, really good at, over the course of the winter. I got really, after that kind of, well, particularly after that last outburst, I got really good at kind of acknowledging the negative things coming up and just shutting down. And then drinking is my Achilles heel, because you don't shut shit down when you're drinking. And so a couple of experiences where just with a very small amount of alcohol just turning into me having these really, really ridiculous emotional outbursts that were really, really bad. And so that just kind of got me realizing some things about me and the nature of alcohol and my relationship with it. And so it's okay. So kind of just trying to navigate all these things. And just over the course of the past few weeks, just the darkness is just, it's got like a sledgehammer just beating on my door from the outside. And like the past 3 weeks of my life has just been this weird holding the door shut so that the darkness doesn't flood in. And then something happened. And then it did. The door opened up, and when it opened up, it was it overwhelmed me, and I was able to kind of fight it off, and then it would come back and just tear me down, and I'd fight it off, and it'd come back and it would just tear me down, and so just kind of just trying to process that. So what it's like I just I've dealt with all of my trauma. Like, what else is there? And then so I just kind of determined with myself, like, well, maybe I just need to make peace with this. Maybe this is what being healed looks like for me, because everything was so bad. The fact that I didn't die of a drug overdose, or die when I fell off that 3-story building, or die when all these other things should happen. Maybe that's my reward. I don't get to actually be at peace, but surviving is my reward, I suppose. And you know what? I'm not going to be miserable about that. I'm going to make peace with that. So you know what? That's life. I'm going to make peace with that. I'm going to make peace with the fact that this is what being healed is for me. And so I kind of have that conversation with my wife and kind of share that with her. And then last weekend, it's like, you know what? I need to mow the yard. So it's weird. It's like the darkness comes and goes. It's just a ridiculous roller coaster. And so I'm able to function in life and whatnot, and especially when I'm out in the world and stuff like that. Like, I really enjoy my job, so I'm able to be really positive there. But a lot of it was just at home. A lot of my negativity came out at home, which really sucks. But so anyway, so just dealing with this and kind of like, so you know what? I've made peace with this whole thing, and so I've been using weed for the past year, because it really helps with the darkness. Like, when the darkness is coming in, if like I don't get super high, like I don't like that, but just there's this place, there's this beginning when you just a couple of hits or one good hit off of some decent stuff or whatever, like where it's just like all the madness is up here, and then just one good hit, just like it brings everything down to a manageable level, and it allowed me to exist. And so I've been kind of using it therapeutically, but then here toward the end, it wasn't even working. The darkness was coming through, even through the weed, and that's when I was just like, oh shit, this is gonna get bad. So then I had this little vape thing that I've been using because it's really convenient, and I thought it was empty because it ran out. It stopped hitting the last time that I'd used it. I was working on my car. So then I was kind of in this place where, like, okay, like, the weed's not working anymore, so I think I need to just leave the weed alone and just deal with this. And so I decided to do that. And then in doing that, like, it's just like there's a lot of positivity. The darkness, like, I'm just in this place of just like, I've left the weed alone. I'm gonna sit with it. I'm gonna work this out. I'm not gonna chase away the feelings anymore. I think for a long time I had to. I couldn't. I didn't know how to deal with them. So I just chased them away. And I'm so glad that I did. And then I kind of realized it seems like I can't chase them anymore. So I guess now I've got this understanding of facing your demons or whatever. I know that, and I've done that to a degree, but I realized that I still hadn't come fully face to face yet. So when my pen ran out, I didn't smoke any weed for like a week or so. And then last Sunday, I decided I was going to mow my yard. My mower wouldn't start, so I got in my toolbox, and I was getting some tools to mess with it to get it to work. And my little vape thing was in there, and it was empty last time, but I picked it up, and just because I like to smoke a little before I do stuff. That's the best time to do it, like going to mow the yard and stuff like that. So just hoping beyond hope. I hit it, and there was stuff came out, and then so I hit it a few more times, and so, well, there we go. So I took a few hits off it. I was like, there we go, hell yeah. And I went out and I got my mower running, and I went out and I mowed the yard. And so I'm mowing the yard, and then my mind just goes into thinking mode, and just kind of thinking through this whole notion of, like, the spirit led me into dealing with all my trauma because that's what was going to heal me. And I've dealt with it all, but I'm not, like, I was having a real hard time just accepting that this darkness was going to be there forever. I wasn't too keen on that. And so just thinking through that, like I still felt like something was wrong. Even though I'd accepted it, I still felt like it wasn't right. Like, this wasn't it. This can't be it. And so just thinking through that, like, I've already went through all of this trauma. And then it's like, well, what is that? I dealt with it all. And then the voice says, you have to deal with the root. And I said, well, how do you deal with the root? And the voice says, you dig it up. And I said, and then so my first thought is that, okay, so then in the whole process of that, like, the root became very clear. So I have several extremely traumatic events that I've recalled, that I've kind of dealt with. But for some reason, I know exactly why, but in the past couple of weeks, it has come up again. There's a story that my mom told me. Like when my dad went to Desert Storm, I was like 5, and super big into GI Joe, and so I guess he's getting ready to deploy to go to Iraq, and I'm super excited. I don't have any recollection of this, so but the story is he's going to war. I'm excited because my dad's GI Joe, and that's cool, and he flips out on me, just flips out on me, and my mom tells me that she says from that day forward you were different. Something happened to you then, and you were different. So for some reason, that came up in the past couple of weeks. That the remembrance of that, whether it was in a conversation or if it just popped into my memory, that came up into my memory within the past couple of weeks. And then, probably just being minded about this whole childhood trauma thing, I have this memory. I have very, very few childhood memories. I wonder why. But one memory that I have that is crystal clear and distinct, I'd forgotten about it forever, but for whatever reason it came back. I thought about it for the first time in probably 20 years, or who knows how long. I don't recall the last time I remember it. It was just like, oh yeah, that's a thing that took place. But what it was, when I was 5 or 6 years old, I remember just being in my room playing with my toys and just hearing my dad screaming at me, and then and he's not there, and then just going back to playing. And I remember that happening for a long time, over a stretch of time. And I forgot all about that. And then in that moment, while I'm mowing my yard, those two stories converged, where my mom told me that my dad was screaming at me, and then I was different from that point forward. And then this memory that I have of hearing this scream and it startling me and nobody's around. And then those two memories converged. And so I'm sitting here mowing this whole thing about the root. You got to dig up the root. And I said, well, how do you dig up the root? I said, it's inviting me. The mushrooms are inviting me back in. So it's like, I need to get some shrooms. I need to get a hold of my dude, and I need to get some shrooms from him. I was like, but he doesn't want to. I was like, but I bet you I can talk him into it. I was like, wow, that's kind of selfish, dude. Like, you might be playing a sticky game here. And then I was like, well, maybe I can cultivate my own. So I'm just sitting here. I go into this freak out mode about how do I get these shrooms, because I gotta go to the next level or whatever. And then I just having trained myself to recognize the negativity. I was like, whoa, this is getting negative. Let's leave that alone. And just as soon as I say let's leave that alone, it comes into my brain that he was a broken little boy, and he was terrified to go to war, and you were so excited, and he didn't know how to deal with that. And because he didn't know how to deal with that, he just exploded. Oh, and that ruined me, it destroyed me. And I never had any communication with him forever. I got back in touch with my uncle through my mom about 10 years ago, and anyway, super weird shit. I'm hanging out with my uncle all the time. And going up and doing stuff with him, and going up for Thanksgiving and stuff like that. And then in October of 2013, he calls me at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, oh, what's going on here? So I answer, I'm like, Rick, what's up? And he says, Lee, your dad's dead. And just nothing. Oh, what happened? You know, he had a heart attack walking into work. I was like, oh. But then I heard it in his voice, and then I started feeling bad. Like when I, cause he was the only one kind of left that was really close. My dad burned a lot of bridges. And so him and Rick were the only ones that were really close. And once I heard it in Rick's voice, then it hit me a bit. And I was like, oh, so we end up going to his funeral and this, that, and the other. And my uncle gives me a big tote of stuff that my dad had left at his house. And so I'm going through it, and this is like 10 years ago, and find this thing, like he's got this little section of stuff, and it's pictures of us kids, and a bunch of pictures of me. And maybe I don't know, maybe I'm just making this up in my own mind, but in that whole thing is that whole experience when the voice told me that he was a little tidbit of information. My grandpa, my dad's dad, apparently was like the Grand Wizard of the KKK in like whatever their little neck of the woods was. So that's the environment that my dad grew up in. And so So the voice tells me that he was a broken little boy, and he was terrified to go to war, and he didn't know how to deal with your excitement, and he exploded on you, and he broke you, and then he knows that he broke you, and then that broke him for the rest of his life, and he carried with him forever. He carried with him until the day that he died. And so when this starts, I'm mowing my yard, and like it just gets to the point. I'm on the ground again, and I'm just, oh my God, I'm just crying. Like I thought I was crying deep dark tears in the shower that day, boy. Oh, just pouring and pouring. And then by the end of it, just going through this all, I felt so bad for him. And I just wished so bad that I could just go up and give him a hug and tell him it's okay. And then it was gone. And I was done crying. And then I got up. And for the first time in my life, that darkness wasn't there. And I was like, oh, wait a minute now. Wait a minute. And I'm like, no. This is so I just finished mowing the yard. And I just processed this whole thing. And it's just there. It's just this thing that was there forever and ever and ever. It's not there anymore. And then once again, it's like, oh, but yeah, well, it'll come back. It'll come back tomorrow. It'll come back next week or whatever. But the thing is I was able to stay out of the negativity for a few weeks back when those things were happening before. That was still there, but I was able to create a barrier. But when I came out of this, it just wasn't there. And it was palpable. I felt the difference. I felt lighter. And so I finished mowing the yard, and I go in and I tell my wife, I was like, when I started, I said, remember I told you that every time I mow the yard I receive something? She said, yeah. I said, well, it still works. And then so I tell her the story. And then just, of course, starts to break down and yada, yada, yada. And then so that was last Sunday. And so just going through the course of this whole week, all the negative things that usually set me off, they just don't. Like, well, it's this weird thing. I've developed this philosophy of just allowing emotions to flow through and just not holding on to anything, but just allowing everything just to kind of flow through. And so the whole course of this week, all the things that would happen that would get me, and then even maybe I'd only hold on to it for 10 minutes and then it would go away. But like just all these different things, and then just had this big crazy thing just happen Friday at work that was like I had to go. My 9-hour day turned into 11.5-hour day. Had to deal with a bunch of crazy stuff at work, with the police and all kinds of stuff. And so, but it was just this calm, everything was, and then just getting into arguments with, or just debates, or just things that normally just set me off, or that trigger the darkness that I have to push down, they just weren't there. Like I could get frustrated, the frustration would go away, and there's no darkness, because before my whole life, before last Sunday, before this past Sunday, every time something negative happens, it triggers the demon, and I have to push it back down. So all week, all kinds of stuff has gone less than right, whether it's in traffic or just disagreements with my wife or this crazy thing that happened at work, whatever. But everything, it just flows in and it flows out, and the darkness is gone. And okay, so the darkness is gone. My yard is ready to be mowed again, so I get out there, and well, anyway, so and then in the kind of taking a step back from all of the incredible emotions within the once I was done crying and I started mowing again, the voice said, now it is time to tell your story. The world needs to hear your story. Go tell your story. So here it is, guys. Take it for what it is. It's my experience. I fully believe that this life is a mystery, and it is our job to go figure it out and find peace in it. Understand that negativity and positivity are balancing forces in this universe, and the key is to reject and dispel and not entertain negative energy. And you keep the negativity at bay, and it creates a vacuum that draws in positivity. This is what all the manifestation, this stuff, that's what it's talking about. They've glamorized it. People just adding their own interpretations, all well and good, whatever, that doesn't matter. What it is by actively resisting the negativity and intentionally focusing on the positivity, you create a rift in space and time. You create a vacuum, and by intentionally resisting the negativity and by resisting the devil and drawing near to God, you create a vacuum that draws in your destiny and your energy and your healing and who knows what? Who knows what we can do? Our brains control the world. What your perception is yours. It's your own universe. Ignorance is a bliss. What you ignore isn't real. And that sounds weird and selfish, but the fact is, it fucking sucks that there's this crazy shit going on in the world. It really, really sucks that stuff's going on with Ukraine and Israel and all these things, that everybody's killing each other. That sucks. But the reality is, what Spirit taught me is that you can't do anything about that. And therefore, you are doing a disservice to yourself and to the whole universe by focusing on negative things that you can't touch. While the reality is that you have a whole universe directly in front of you. Leave that fucking screen alone. You have a whole universe right in front of you that you can touch and you can love and you can inspire. Do that. That's how the world changes. Fuck all this nonsense that's going on. It's all a fucking game. Who knows what it is? I don't know what it is. I don't want to pretend like I know what's going on, but it's a fucking game. It is. All this shit, the thing is when I started entertaining the idea that it wasn't real, I said, well, how do I test that? And I said, well, if it's real, when I put this phone down, it's still going to affect me. I put my phone down for like 2 weeks. I didn't ingest anything, and that's when ignorance is a bliss was proven to me, that by simply not entertaining negative things that you can't do anything about, they lose their power. So whatever's going on over there is going on over there. You freaking out about it, staring at your phone, isn't going to help it. But if you ignore that, accept that it sucks, and accept that the world should be better, accept that. You have compassion for it, but you can't invest any energy in that, because there's nothing you can do about it. Your world, your universe is what you can see. When you turn around and look everywhere, you've got this body that you can be taken care of. You've got your family, you've got your friends, you've got whatever you've got is all right in front of you. And if you can overcome the darkness, whatever yours is, if you can find your way to do that and become a whole, healed human being that is filled with this electricity, you can inspire. And that energy is going to shift the pendulum, and we're going to bring the balance back. It's probably going to get pretty dark first, but those of us who are serious, because narrow is the way and difficult, that doesn't mean it's kind of hard. No, it means you've got to go dance with your demons for a while and get shit straight. But that is what it is, and that's where we are. You're not going to protest your way into a better world. You're not going to vote your way into a better world. You're not going to fight your way into a better world. You are going to manifest a better world when you realize that you are the co-creator of your own world, and take responsibility for that and release that energy into the universe and let it do its work. Good times are coming, folks.